indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The meeting is being tape recorded. Chairman's additions or deletions. We're adding 2.6, appointment for Council on Aging, that just came in. We have 1.5, public comment period.
I have a question on that.
Sure.
How does the public comment period work? If you see something in the agenda, do you talk about it? Do you say, I want to talk at this item? Or do you talk now when you don't know what's going to be said? Do you see what I'm saying?
I think I do. I think what you're asking is if you could be part of the discussion when the discussion comes up for the board.
Exactly.
Typically, no. Okay?
Okay.
And the reason I'm saying that is it's the board's deliberation. Okay, so that doesn't mean that I wouldn't entertain a question.
Okay.
Or call on somebody if they had a particular expertise in that item, but this is to give input. You know, something's coming up in the agenda and you want to give your opinion on it, or you have a question or concern about something in general in town.
Okay, so this is just something to mull over. Perhaps there should be a public comment period at the beginning for things that are not on the agenda, and maybe a public comment period at the end for things that are. That you don't, when you don't know what's gonna, I don't know. That it's just something to mull over. That's all. Putting in.
What I want to be careful of is that the public doesn't feel like they are part of the conversation when we're deliberating and we're discussing something, especially if it's going to have a vote. That's when we need to talk, and it's not an open discussion in that sense. I mean, you're privy to it. You can certainly hear it, but if you want to give a comment or your opinion about something prior to that, then we'll gladly welcome your feedback. I can't, you know, there's absolutely no guarantee whether or not that's going to be listened to in the deliberation. That's the conversation we have.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any public comments? Okay, if not, appointments. 2.1, appoint Patrick Ring as a per diem paramedic for the Townsend Fire EMS Department for a term effective November 20th, 2018 to June 30th, 2019, with a one-year probationary period. Could I get a motion?
I move the board appoint Patrick Ring as a per diem paramedic for the Townsend Fire EMS Department for a term effective November 20th, 2018 to June 30th, 2019 with a one-year probationary period.
Second.
We've moved and seconded. Any questions or comments?
Nope.
Not all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You want us to go slowly?
No. I'm right there with you.
You can pick it up.
As long as Hartley's filming.
It's freezing rain out there. You might want to pick it up.
2.2, appoint Shane Arujo as a call firefighter. Should that be on-call firefighter for the Townsend Fire EMS Department, effective November 20th, 2018 to June 30th, 2019, with a one-year probationary period.
I move the board appoint Shane Arujo as an on-call firefighter for the Townsend Fire EMS Department effective November 20th, 2018 to June 30th, 2019 with a one-year probationary period.
I'll second that, but I think the position is actually call.
A call
Well, it says
firefighter.
on the, it says on the thing the fire chief's on
Oh,
call.
I didn't.
On call, it does?
Yes,
Okay.
that's where I got it from.
Okay, so it is on-call. Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 2.3, appoint Anthony Michelizzi as the Department Assistant for the Treasurer Collector's Office, contingent upon the passing of a medical exam and a query with a one-year probationary period.
I move the board appoint Anthony Michelizzi to the Department Assistant for the Treasurer's Collector's Office, contingent upon passing of a medical exam and a query with a one-year probationary period.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Do we have an effective date on that?
Effective with your vote?
Effective today?
Sure.
You amend that motion?
I amend to start the effective date to 11/20/18.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Not all those in favor?
Aye.
2.4, appoint Donna Howard as the designated representative for the LRTA Advisory Board. This is the thing that just came in.
Oh, yeah. I move the board appoint Donna Howard as the designated representative to the LRTA Advisory Board.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 2.5, appoint Town Administrator James M. Kreidler Jr. as Townsend's representative on the Neshoba Valley Regional Dispatch Administrative Board, and Police Chief Rick Bailey as Townsend's alternate representative to the NVRD Administrative Board, and to reaffirm the appointment of Mark Boynton as a voting member of the Operations Board and Jay Sartell as an alternate member.
I move the board appoint Town Administrator James M. Kreidler Jr. as Townsend's representative on the NVRD Administrative Board, Police Chief Rick Bailey as Townsend's alternative representative to the NVRD Administrative Board, and to reaffirm the appointment of Mark Boynton as a voting member of the Operations Board and Jay Sartell as an alternate member.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Is this just an update, or is it change?
It's to make sure that we have it on record.
They just wanted it to
They
be
just wanted,
reaffirmed.
they wanted it on record, so we're just reaffirming.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 2.5.1, direct the town administrator to notify Neshoba Valley Regional Dispatch in writing of the reaffirmation for the appointments to the admin and operation boards.
I move the board direct the town administrator to notify Neshoba Valley Regional Dispatch in writing of the reaffirmation of the appointments to the admin and operations boards.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. 2.6, appoint Susan Deniak as Assistant Program Coordinator for the Council on Aging, contingent upon the passing of a medical exam and query with a one-year probationary period. I am assuming this effective date is today?
Yes, ma'am.
I move the board appoint Susan Deniak as Assistant Program Coordinator for the Council on Aging, contingent upon the passing of a medical exam and query with a one-year probationary period effective 11/20/18.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions? Not all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
3.1, review, approve, sign the 2019 renewal for an all-alcoholic restaurant liquor license 00017-RS-1286 from Mike Farlang Gourmet House, Inc., DBA Panda Walk, Townsend, contingent upon a valid certificate of inspection.
I move the board approve and sign the 2019 renewal for an all-alcohol restaurant liquor license number 00017-RS-1286 for Mike Fair Lang Gourmet House Incorporated, doing business as Panda Walk, Townsend, Massachusetts, contingent upon a valid certificate of inspection.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Is it just renewals?
Yes.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 3.2, review, approve, sign the 2019 renewal for wine and malt restaurant liquor license 00021-RS-1286 for Nancy J. Pappas of Patriot Pizza and Subs, Inc., 24 Main Street, Townsend, Mass., contingent upon a valid certificate of inspection.
I move the board approve and sign the 2019 renewal for a wine and malt restaurant liquor license number 00021-RS-1286 1286 for Nancy Pappas of Patriot Pizza and Subs Incorporated, 24 Main Street, Townsend, Mass., contingent upon a valid certificate of inspection.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor? Aye. You aye on that?
Aye, yes, sorry.
Why don't we just
pile
pile
it there.
them? 3.3, review, approve, sign the following 2019 common what?
Victular.
Vic,
No, I YouTubed it today.
no, he YouTubed it.
It's Vittler.
Vittler. It's spelled V-I-C-T-U-A-L-L-E-R.
I checked it 3
The
times.
shorthand is Vic,
Vic,
common Vic.
common Vic. All right, we could do that.
Okay.
I'll go along with that. Renewal license applications, I'm not going to read them, you can.
I move the board approve and sign the following 2019 Common Vic renewal license applications. Gourmet House, DBA Panda Walk, Mike Fairlane, 18 Main Street. MPAC Foods, Inc., DBA Cliffs Cafe, Kristen Picaro, 266 to 268 Main Street. Patriot Pizza and Subs, Nancy Pappas, 24 Main Street. Energy North, DBA Hafner's, Michelle Wagner, 197 Main Street. Townsend Pizza Incorporated, Greg C. Frediani, 237 Main Street.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I just said second.
Nope.
If not, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, I'm going to turn the chair to you, Cindy.
You are?
Yes. All right, and I'm going to
Yes.
recuse myself.
I thought you didn't work there anymore. What do you?
I do occasionally, so.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
Okay.
Where do I leave, please? Thank you.
Okay, number 3.4, I'll ask the clerk to just read the motion.
I move the board approve the 2019 Common Vic renewal application for McNabb's Pharmacy Incorporated, care of McNabb, noon, 233 Main Street, Townsend, Mass.
Second, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Thank you. Here you go. Here's that one. These we already did.
There's the stack.
Jim, that's the blank one that doesn't have mine.
Oop. Thank you.
3.5, review, approve, sign a 2019 renewal for a Class 3 license application for Carl Cerullo, MJS Metals, 60 Turnpike Road, Townsend, Mass.
I move the board approve and sign a 2019 renewal for Class 2 license application for, I'm reading the wrong one, I'm sorry. I move the board approve and sign the 2002 renewal license for Class 3 license application for Carl Cerullo, MGS Metal, 60 Turnpike Road, Townsend, Mass.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
3.6, review, approve, sign a 2019 renewal for Class 2 license application for William and Jamie Barrow, W. Barrow Enterprises Limited, 345 Main Street, Townsend, Mass.
I move the board approve and sign a 2019 renewal for Class 2 license application for William and Jamie Barrow, W. Barrow Enterprises Limited, 345 Main Street, Townsend, Mass.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 3.7, review, approve, sign a 2019 renewal for Class 2 license application for Joseph Z. Shank, Harbor Auto Body, 77 Turner Road, Townsend, Mass.
I move the board approve and sign a 2019 renewal for Class 2 license application for Joseph Z. Shank, Harbor Auto Body, 77 Turner Road, Townsend, Mass.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 3.8, review, approve, sign a one-day special license for Terry Roy, VFW Post 6538, in conjunction with the retirement party to be held on December 15th, 2018, with sale hours from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m.
I move the board approve and sign a one-day special license for Terry Roy, VFW Post 6538, in conjunction with the retirement party to be held on December 15th, 2018, with sale hours from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
3.9, review comment on planning board mandatory referral regarding site plan review 22 West Meadow Road.
I would keep those in order because the attachments go with each thing.
Did you want to just...
This is the one we thank for the referral.
Yeah, usually, unless you have any questions.
I'd like to move the board thank the mandatory referral from the planning board on 22 West Meadow Road.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion or questions? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Just 2. Did I get 2?
Sign yours.
Yes, I did. Excuse us for just a minute, so these don't get separated. You keeping good track of these, Jim?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Make sure that you put them on her desk, not yours.
From here to there.
Something happens between now and tomorrow. I'm surprised she trusted you with all those.
I know.
Unless it's on camera.
Yep. 3.10, authorize Town Administrator James M. Kryler to be the signatory for the annual report to be submitted to DOER, Department of Energy Resources, due on December 4th, 2018.
I move the board authorize the town administrator, James M. Kryler, to be the signatory for the annual report to be submitted to DOER, Department of Energy Resources, due December 4th, 2018.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? Jim, do you want to just explain what that is,
Sure.
please?
Just one of the requirements of the Green Communities grant that we have, that we're implementing, is that we do quarterly and then annual reports. You've earlier authorized MRPC to work with us in coordinating the projects and the reporting, and this just requires a signature from an agent of the community, and because it'll need to take place when you're not yet going to be meeting, they're seeking your authorization to have me sign.
Okay with me. Any questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
3.13, review, approve and sign a proclamation for an Eagle Scout ceremony scheduled for November 23rd, 2018.
I move the board approve and sign a proclamation for an Eagle Scout ceremony scheduled for November 23rd, 2018.
Do you want to read it?
After you second it.
Second.
Proclamation, whereas the Boy Scouts of America offers an environment and association which fosters good citizenship, honesty, integrity, and intelligence in our youngest people, and whereas the practical aspects of scouting provides training for our youth in survival, independence, and a sense of loyalty to our country, and whereas Stephen Patrick Belcher joined the Boy Scout Troop 81 of Townsend, Massachusetts in 2011, has completed requirements for, and having been examined by an Eagle Scout Board of Review, was found worthy of the rank of Eagle Scout. And whereas Stephen Patrick Belcher has his Eagle Scout projects removed an unsafe handicap ramp at Father Mealy Hall and repaired the steps and installed new hand railings. He also reworked some of the landscaping, and whereas the approach to attain the Eagle rank is lengthy, detailed, and difficult, and requires intelligence, tenacity, determination, and a highly motivated desire to succeed. Now, therefore, we, Sue Lizio, Cindy King, and Wayne Miller, Selectmen of the Town of Townsend, Middlesex County, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, do hereby proclaim Friday, November 23rd, 2018, as Stephen Patrick Belcher Day in the town of Townsend, and urge all citizens of Townsend, together with their family, friends, to join us honoring the Boy Scouts of America and saluting Stephen Patrick Belcher for his achievement.
Yay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Need a cough drop? A cough drop?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, 314, review, approve the Townsend Meeting Hall policy. This is the second reading.
I move the board review and approve the Townsend Meeting Hall policy, second reading.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions on it?
Did we change anything from last time?
Negative.
No, that's okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
315, approve, sign a road opening permit regarding 45 Warren Road for Unitil.
This one? This one's,
I know. It doesn't look like this was made out correctly. Did you see the
What?
backup for this one? 315?
I guess it was on the second page.
I just signed it, so hopefully it's all right.
Exact location of excavation, 45 Warren Road, but is Unitil the applicant as well?
They're
applicant
installing
is-
gas services, so I hope so.
The applicant and the contractor are both Unitil.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it says up here.
Just looks different for me, so for some reason.
Yeah, it does. I don't know why.
I move the board approve and sign a road opening permit, 45 Warren Road for Unitil.
Here's what needs to be signed, so. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Bottom. Nope. 3.16, discussion regarding unregistered vehicle bylaw, and designate the police department to issue non-criminal disposition fines or designate a board member to issue fines. Jim?
Yes, Madam Chair. If you look at the 3.16 document that's in your packet, the relevant part of it begins with Section D, halfway down the page, unregistered motor vehicle bylaw. Town council opines that it's an unusual bylaw, given that the selectmen are listed as the enforcement authority, and the only one expressly carved out is having the ability to issue a fine. So what we have when we get to the warrant in a few moments is going to be a proposed revision to the bylaw, which would have the police department as the enforcement authority. The board still, it having to come before the board for the fine is the way the draft reads in here, but that could also be delegated to the police department if it's your choice. So council is just, in so many words, saying that that would be an appropriate thing for us to do for our bylaw if we want to get it away from it being the board's
Right,
prerogative.
but my understanding, I think, talking to Carolyn too, was we can't go forward with actually fining. We have 2 or 3 that are in process, that we've sent notices to, that a
With-
fine will be.
Right, without non-criminal disposition, having
Right.
tied to that, don't
Right.
have the authority to.
Right, so
Correct.
that's what this is tonight, right?
Yep.
To be able to do
Yep.
that.
And that appears in the bylaw in a few moments.
Any questions on it?
No,
If not, all those in favor?
I didn't make a motion.
No, you didn't. Make a motion, would you?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think there's a motion there.
No, I thought we were having a discussion first, then. I move to designate the police department to issue non-criminal disposition fines or designate a board member to issue fines.
It's an or, so we have to pick one. We can't say both. Are we going to say both?
I,
Either the police or the board can? Is that what the bylaw's going to say?
It's the board or its designee.
Oh, so that's what the bylaw's going to say?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Second then. That seems weird if we're going
it
to...
seems reversed, actually.
Why?
Let me go to, it reads, police chief or designee shall enforce, police chief or designee shall perform the inspection, and then the penalty is listed as Board of Selectmen, period. So you would get an inspection done and a report done by the police chief or designee. The report comes to you, and then you make the determination as a board, the way this is currently drafted.
To
issue-
designate.
To issue the fine. You can change that to be Board of Selectmen or designee on that last part. So you could, if any given board chooses to have that all rest with the police chief, at some point in time, you can do that.
Maybe we have to do this now because the bylaw's not changed yet?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So we're all right with the way that it's written in
Absolutely.
here?
So I seconded it, so...
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
317, review, discuss the special town meeting warrant and vote to sign out of session. What's the close date of that?
You asked me that, didn't you?
Yeah, I know, I can't remember though.
I want to say it's this Friday. I believe it's this coming Friday.
It's Friday,
Yeah. Check quickly here.
but that's the thing that we were gonna, that the town hall's pretty much closed, right?
I think town hall's, if we haven't voted, we'll close it. We will be.
We did.
Oh, we did?
Yeah. I can pull the schedule. If you want to take a recess, I can do that, or we can just get to it at the end.
Get to it at the end, I guess, that's
Okay.
fine.
I'm wondering, Chair, if we want to put the, going over the warrant at the end as opposed to, and get rid of the other business, because I know some people are here for some of the work session, I think. Process for Conservation Commission. I don't know what else is here. I don't know, do you want to?
Well, I think
The
some
warrant can
people are
take a
here for
while
the
to read.
warrant too, so.
Yeah, I don't know, it's up to you. We're going to be here the same amount of time.
Yeah, I know, let's just keep going.
Okay.
Madam Chair, you should each have a copy of the draft of the warrant as it exists tonight. There will be 2 additional that have come in, one for the treasurer's office and one for the IT department, and I'll speak to those as we get to those parts of the warrant. There's a more overarching issue, however. The town accountant informed me officially tonight, just as she was bringing the warrants up, the DOR has advised they may not have free cash certified by December 13th.
I was wondering about that.
They said they could, It's likely, but they can't guarantee. So obviously, any of these articles that are financial and that are predicated on free cash having been certified can't be acted on if free cash hasn't been certified. So that leaves you a couple of choices. One would be to reschedule a town meeting, which I would not recommend.
Oh.
Two would be to go forward because the planning board specifically needs to have, on or before the end of December, the planning article for the moratorium for marijuana. Otherwise, effective January 1st, there's no coverage at all in the community. Additionally, in the chance that they do get it certified, we could then go forward with each of the financial articles. If we get to December 13th and they've not certified, we would be in the position to pass over the articles that are financial in nature, do the ones that are not. There's still quite a few articles that we could take up that night, and postpone to a time certain and pick a time that is more likely to be at a time when DOR will have certified the free cash, perhaps after the holidays, and have those articles taken up at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you cancel it and reschedule, there's always the possibility that they will have it certified, then we'll have missed, and we can't cancel the whole thing because of the planning issue. So,
But we can't reschedule to like, I mean, is there suspicion that it would be just a week or two, or?
they're not able to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we're gonna just, we'll have to have,
Plot ahead.
if they're not certified, we'll have to have another special town meeting.
Continuation of the same.
It would
Right,
just
but
be
we'd have to have another meeting.
Right.
you could adjourn to a different day.
Right.
Right.
Okay. All right. That makes
There's-
sense, that part.
There's some
Okay.
effort being made to try to get us leapfrog closer to the top of the pile. There are several communities, more than several communities that
I
are
would think
waiting.
so.
Okay.
Given that, we'll go through under the presumption that all is well. Okay? Article 1 would be prior fiscal year financial articles. If there had been any, we don't have any old year bills, so that will be passed over. Article 2 is a request for $7,500 for the purpose of funding costs associated with placing American flags along Main Street during holiday celebrations. This is one where the chair and I spoke about this, whether or not this budget request reflects capital one-time purchases or whether it requests what would be ongoing budget obligation. Now, between now and town meeting, we'll determine that. The article is in, it's been submitted properly, so it will go forward. The reason there's a need to clarify that is because when we're using free cash, we should not be using free cash for things that are operational in nature and recurrent as expenses. We should be using free cash for one-time
And there's nothing else we
expenditures.
can use.
Yeah, and this
right?
says placing, this doesn't say purchasing, this says placing.
Right.
And I
It
thought
sounds
they
like
were,
it's the labor.
yeah,
It's the
they
con-
were,
It's the contract, I believe it's the contract. There's some flag purchases and some equipment, but I believe it's the contractor to come and do the placement. So we'll get that resolved.
Is there, there would be no other way that we could
The
approve
The
them?
American Flag Committee has their own bank account that they've been maintaining over the years. It doesn't have funds sufficient to cover this, which is why they're seeking an appropriation. You may recall that when we were working on the policy with the committee, we had advocated that they put together a budget request to be included in the annual operating budget, so they could have the work done. We didn't have
I'm
that.
sure they're worried about being prepared for at least Memorial Day,
Sure,
but
sure.
that's hitting like at the same time as, well, no.
well, we're gonna have a
After
special town meeting as part of the annual anyway.
Yeah, but, I mean, you could have it in the annual anyway
That's right.
and still make,
Well, it would have to be a special because Memorial Day is in this fiscal year. So it would have to be a special.
Special, the same day.
But it would be,
as the
we
annual.
usually have a special for the end of the year
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
As part of, right before
Yeah.
the annual anyway, so.
So the point is, we recognize the
have to
need,
be.
recognize the need for this, and it's
Yeah.
reflective of what you asked them to do. Just the mechanics of it we'll have to be careful of.
okay.
Okay. Next, you'll see Article 3, which is a request of $35,000 to supplement the legal expense account. You'll recall that there was a personnel action that involved a settlement, and we fronted the money in advance of what we knew would be a special town meeting when free cash was available, and this is the effort to supplement that expense account.
Is it accurate to call that a settlement?
That's what it was titled.
Okay, thank you.
And then we have Article 4, which is, as of yet, an unknown sum being sought to supplement the police department. And we will have the same discussion on that, given that it's written as personal services account, which would, again, reflect an ongoing operational thing, unless there is some explanation as to why it's not.
So we don't have any backup on that?
As of yet, we do not. We just have that article as a placeholder needing to be filled in before the warrant is finalized. Next, we have Article 5, which is a request of $5,500 to supplement the audit service expense account. And this is entirely because when you change treasurer collectors, you should do, for the benefit of the town and the prior incumbent, a date and time certain audit of where we stand financially. So we know everything is clean, and the person leaving knows everything was clean when they left. Article 6 is $3,900 to supplement the facilities expense account for repair or replacing a relay electronic start in the elevator. You may recall during Election Day,
Oh, I thought that was more money than that. That's not too bad.
the elevator died. They were here very quickly and got it going again, but it's happened 3 times now. So we definitely need to get that taken care of. The same issue.
I took the elevator up in there.
You generally won't get stuck in it. Once it's moving, you're good. It's generally, once it's stationary, it's dead.
With the door open or closed?
Closed. You just, no lights, nothing.
Okay.
So my point is, you'll know. You won't be able to get into it.
So,
Oh,
help
can I get out of it once I'm in it?
Yes, once it's been moving, we've never had anybody get stuck. It's only
Oh.
once it's sitting still, the
just sits
relay.
there.
You try to press a button to start it, and the relay is.
I'm gonna take the stairs today. When are we getting this fixed?
ASAP.
They came out and did what? A patch kind of
Yeah,
repair?
the same thing they did the first time it came out, and that they've done the third time
So it's
now.
not a real replacement
It
of
is-
that?
It is not. It
Okay,
is-
this is
it
for the
is,
replacement.
Right. This is a replacement part. What they've done is come out and do whatever they do to a
Update.
relay to,
So I have a question, and it's a general question regarding maintenance issues like this. How do we budget for those kinds of things?
well, if you look at the budget last year, there's an amount of money carried for Memorial Hall for all of the maintenance contracts. So the elevator maintenance contract, for instance, is covered. The
But there's no
HVAC.
warranty on it, so,
There is not. That's why we have a maintenance contract on it. So if things that are generally expected based on wear and tear to break, we have things budgeted. So we'll have, I think in that budget, there's $30,000 for miscellaneous repairs. Something like this, and then there's another one that we'll be getting to, which is one of the circulating pumps for the heating system in the building. Those aren't things that would have been expected to have gone, so those are unusual, and that's why there'd be specific articles requesting the funding for them. Could he fund out of his budget and make that payment? I think he's going to, once he knows that this has been passed, because we need to do it, but he needs to know that he's got the money because he has the rest of the fiscal year still to get through.
and what's he expended so far this fiscal year, do you know?
I don't have that with me. I actually have it on my desk, but I don't have it with me.
Okay. I mean, it's hard to estimate things like that, but, you know, regular maintenance is one thing, and you know how much regular maintenance
Sure.
costs. But you also have to make sure you put aside some money for catastrophic, you know, the washing machine broke and the
Yeah.
water heater flooded all over the basement. Not that I've had either one of those happen ever, but,
And
you know.
you would normally have the Finance Committee's reserve fund for those types of mid-year, between town meeting expenses that come up that aren't budgeted.
We also have a request to
Yeah.
To replenish it. So in a pinch, you know, you could hit the Finance Committee and see if they found favor in granting it, but because we have the special town meeting coming up, this was the route sought.
Yeah, I think from a municipal finance perspective too, I mean, we've been on relatively most towns are on a relatively tight string anyway, that to budget more, much more than the routine maintenance, or what would be expected to be routine maintenance, it really ties up your, more than your free cash. It prevents you from even having access to it, so that if we don't spend that money, it's just going to roll over and not be, it's stuck, where having expenses that are above the norm, I mean, 3,900 we could have used in the reserve fund, but with, you know, if we're getting upwards of the larger repairs, I don't know what that circulating pump is going to be.
6,500.
But you get, okay, so you start to go up, getting closer and closer to the capital requirement. It's better to have town meeting vote
Sure.
for those things if they're needed. And because you're still going to have the free cash coming back to you if you've been budgeting, managing your financing.
You know, I understand the economics of it.
And the townspeople get to know what's going on as opposed to
Well,
just reserve fund transfer.
I understand the economics. I understand, you know, the budgeting challenge. But what I get concerned about is if that were not repairable, and we had an elevator sitting out there, we're not in compliance with having an elevator for somebody that needs it. And we ran into that on the date of the voting.
Correct.
So it's, I'm just saying, I'm not saying it should be a lot of money, but it stands to reason that, especially with this building, this is an old building, that you're going to have some things that are going to go. And I just was curious as to how we approach that in the budgeting process. And
I mean, I don't want it to be left that the understanding that we're not budgeting for repairs. So we have the budget amount for the maintenance contracts for all of the systems, but we also then have an amount of money budgeted for the repairs of things. This begs a different question, though, when it goes back to your goals and objectives, which is, what are our pieces of capital, what are our pieces of equipment
That's
and
my
our real
point.
property, and what's the expected life, shelf life of each piece, and when
Right.
should you be budgeting for what would be the replacement of the water pump on the boiler?
right, and I don't think we look
It's always
at
a
it that
tightrope.
broadly.
It's never, to my knowledge, it's not been looked at that broadly, and not because people haven't thought of it, but because when you're dealing with a finite number of dollars, the biggest thing that goes, there's actually a Brookings Institute piece that was done on the dollar value of deferred maintenance in municipalities, and it would probably not shock you. It would shock somebody that is in the real world, but in municipalities where you're artificially limited in terms of what you can raise, that's the thing that gets deferred. You pay to keep the lights on, you pay to keep
I
the
just
health
don't want to be
insurance.
penny wise and pound foolish, too.
Well, it kind of goes with what the police department's doing with the new vehicles, is they're setting up two budgets, one with anticipated maintenance costs and unanticipated maintenance costs, and that's part of their
That's
line
right.
item. So I think we should be doing the same as far as the capital piece for our
Well,
goals.
something to think about for budget time.
Absolutely. So the next, Article 7, is in fact that $6,500 ask for facilities for the water pump related to the heating system for Town Hall. Next, you'll see Article 8, an ask for $7,500 for funding to update the roadway pavement management plan. This could be done out of Chapter 90 funds, but as limited as they are, the decision is to try to put them into the road and to actually have the paper done through this type of a process. This, you'll probably remember, this piece ties in with the goal and objective of yours to create a system to meaningfully get after some road repairs in a significant fashion, all of which would be
Road
predicated.
maintenance plan.
Right, predicated on this document.
My goodness, another maintenance plan, huh? Yeah,
It's not the sexy stuff, but it's the necessary stuff.
exactly. I mean, it's just, you know, it's the same thing you do at home. You have to budget for that stuff. You have to plan ahead.
Article 9 is an amount of $1,500 for our share of what is the overage for the construction of regional animal shelter facility in Lunenburg. This predates both Wayne and Sue, but the town went in jointly on a grant opportunity with Lunenburg and Fitchburg. Initially, Fitchburg backed out, so it became just Townsend and Lunenburg. to build a regional animal shelter. We don't currently have one. There's a need for one. We had a grant for the design and a grant for the construction. The cost for the construction comes in around $3,000 above what's available for grant funds. So our share would be this $1,500 in order to be able to execute the contract.
So we already have the grant?
Oh, yeah. Oh, everything's in hand, but we can't execute without funds sufficient for the town of Lunenburg's accountant to certify as to the availability of funds.
And who runs this?
Was authored and is being managed out of Lunenburg, so Heather Lemieux, the town manager in Lunenburg, is the one that's the signator.
Okay.
Article 10, $2,100 for replacing or repairing the rifle strap on the John Burney Blood Monument. So this comes in from Cemetery and Parks and plowing. I think at the last meeting I had suggested that I wasn't certain if it had been something that was removed as a part of a prior refurbishment or if it had been removed more maliciously, but this is an effort to make it right. Article 11 is not seeking an appropriation. It is seeking authorization to amend the capital plan for fiscal 18 to allow the highway superintendent to use $46,000 that had been approved for a truck-mounted ground speed spreader toward the purchase of a roadside mower. So it's just a reallocation of an existing authorization.
I'm confused, though.
Yep.
Highway,
Yep.
and it was a spreader that they wanted?
This was for spreading salt mixture off the back of the trucks.
Okay. And now they want a mower.
Roadside mower. This is one of those pieces of equipment that you see that can reach right out over the guardrail and grind things down and create
Have
better
we ever
sight
had one
distance.
of those before?
I do not know. I don't think so. I know that one's been borrowed in the past to do some work, but I don't think we've had the one that they're looking to get.
And where would we need to do that kind of mowing? I know that
Every street, every guardrail, every corner, basically.
And what have we done before? Rented one?
Yeah, either rented or,
We've rented one or borrowed one from another community, to my knowledge.
yeah, most of the towns, because it's only needed for, it's not a continuous, and it's not a machine that has a winter use and a summer use. It's just once the brush or the bushes and trees start growing into the roadway so that when we're driving down the road we'll hit them. But because it's not a full-time use, the companies that own them generally lease them, or towns that have them, they share.
We've actually had our folks doing a lot of handwork in the summertime, cutting brush back, which is obviously not as efficient as using a piece of machinery.
Do you know if we do New Fitchburg Road, or does the state?
I do not know.
I just thought,
Do you have any questions?
On the state park, it just, okay.
I have one question regarding the capital plan being amended.
Yep.
I didn't see a copy of that in here. An amended plan, or a request for an amended plan?
He's gone before the committee to make the request. It's been granted, but town meeting approves the capital plan, so this is just the ask of town meeting to make the amendment. But if you're...
Okay, so it's just, he's basically using the same amount of money, just switching
Correct.
something out. Okay, all right, I'm all set. You all set, Rick?
All right, 12. 12 is seeking to amend the fiscal 19 capital plan, and it's looking for $66,360 for the purpose of replacing Medic 1 for the Townsend Fire EMS Department. And the ask here wouldn't be out of free cash, it would be out of ambulance receipts. This is one that had been believed to have been approved by the capital planning committee last year. There was some confusion with it,
Yep.
so the discussion at that time was at the next available town meeting, it'll get put back on.
Questions?
Was that, the capital plan committee has met and approved the new cap?
I believe this one has been taken up as well, but it would need to be before the town meeting. I know that they were scheduled
But I
to
mean,
meet,
capital planning
was it last night?
Did you
We were
meet
supposed to-
last night?
No, they didn't post the meeting, so we had to move it to next Monday.
Oh,
Okay.
So,
So assuming they approve that,
correct. That would be a prerequisite. All Article 13 would be seeking appropriation to do some repair and replacement of a portion of the roof at 274 Main Street, which is the rec building or the old bank building, where it's been called something
Oh,
else
right here.
by somebody that's been here for a long time. I forget what it used to be called.
Used to be the Union
The
National.
annex,
The annex.
I don't know.
they
Anyway,
used to call
Call
it
it
the annex.
for that.
That was after the
Do
bank.
we have an estimate on how much?
It's being arrived at, which is why there's a blank there right now still.
Okay.
Article
Because
4
if that's over 10,000, it needs to go
That was on the
capital,
capital
right?
plan. Or that had been requested, I don't.
I
it might
don't
have been.
believe for the amount that they're looking to do, the area they're looking to do, that they expect it to go over that threshold. They're just looking to do
Can't
a
remember.
ridge where, a valley where two of the roofs meet.
But if it's over 10, they have to go to capital.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, Article 14 is going to be withdrawn. There was an ask that was coming in for $5,900 for land use database application, and there've been a couple of meetings on it, and the idea of having a software platform that allows all of our land use and regulatory boards, committees, and offices to speak together is a great idea. This amount in this product didn't quite do all of that. It was limited to just planning, zoning, and Concom. It didn't take in Board of Health and building. And if we're going to do it, we should do it the way it needs to be done completely, so you have one file per parcel or per street address for all departments. So that will likely appear in another form at the annual town meeting. Article 15 is a placeholder. There had been some discussion about the Charter Committee wanting professional help in the form of a consultant. So there is a placeholder article here for technical and professional assistance, but no dollar figure. So I don't know if that stays or goes or otherwise, but it was in the folder to be placed as a placeholder.
I thought it was more for, I think the charter group has been talking about doing a, making sure that we go out to the public and have hearings and discussions and whatnot.
Sure.
And I think part of that was for any printing costs that needed to take place and that kind of thing. John?
That's my recollection.
So would need a number in there.
And that really wouldn't then be professional or technical costs. It would be
It's really a one-time
administrative costs.
administrative,
Yeah.
I mean, possibly professional, depending on who, what you call a design kind of thing. Do you know, if you wanted to do brochures or whatever?
So professional, technical, or administrative costs. Just leave it open. So when the committee next meets, if it's between now and town meeting, if a number materializes, that would be great.
Homework, John.
Got it.
Article 16 is a request that comes in from the Finance Committee to replenish the reserve fund in the amount of $9,954.77.
Is there a limit on how much they can have in the reserve fund?
There is statutorily, and we're nowhere near it.
Well, can we at least say $10,000? I mean, $9,954.77.
Right.
Just round it up.
There's a spreadsheet on my desk right now looking at all of these financial articles, and I did write 10,000, and just because.
Thank you.
I agree that it's easier. Article 17, $15,000 for the purpose of supplementing the fiscal 19 Police Department operating budget appropriation for the lease of 4 police cruisers. I know that the board
Now,
has
what
had
we had to
some
talk about.
discussion with both the chief and the deputy chief on this matter. I know Wayne, particularly, you've done some work offline as the liaison. So this would be that article looking to accomplish that.
Cindy, did you have any questions on that?
Does this require the capital planning committee too?
It's always been carried as an operating budget item for the
Cruisers.
cruisers. They show in the capital plan, but the funding is not coming out of cap stabilization, it's coming out of the operating budget.
It still has to be, I believe it still has to, anything over.
But wasn't it in
And
there?
it was,
This is an amended.
it was last year, so this would be an amended Last year, you probably remember that we
Well-
appropriated an amount that was
Well,
sufficient to either buy
the
one
Board of
or lease
Selectmen-
a number of
The
them.
Board of Selectmen limits, has to set what the capital budget is, and that's why, the things that weren't funded, the Board of Selectmen set 200,000 is generally all they ever, and that's why we keep going farther and farther
Right.
behind on capital
But that's
replenishment.
things just being spent out of the cap stabilization. For instance, the Medic One or any
Oh, right, yeah,
ambulance,
that was
those come out
something
of
else.
outside funds. If we have
Right.
grant funds, we'll show
Water,
those.
something like that, yeah.
Water will show those in the
Oh, I
column.
know, no,
for-
the Board of Selectmen said no on this.
No, we
No,
didn't
no,
vote.
the way it was voted last year was a budget amount of 45,000, which was enough to buy a car or lease 3 was the discussion.
Right.
This would be an additional 15 to bring that up to 4, to
Right,
lease
okay.
4, which was the presentation that the chief and the deputy made at the
Right, I
last
remember,
meeting
okay.
to be able to say this would keep our fleet fresh over
All right,
time.
okay. All right,
Next, you have Article 18 coming in from the Water Enterprise, $30,000 for professional services. I can't speak to...
We have no backup on that?
No, that's what I received. So between now and the finalization, I'll
yeah,
get that squared away.
but this is from their free cash, not ours.
Correct.
Okay.
Article 19 is, again, from the Water Enterprise Fund, $115,000 from free cash for the Meadow Road Water Main Replacement Capital Improvement Plan. So there's already an appropriation that has been made. This is to augment that.
Was the original amount not correct
That's my understanding.
by $115,000?
Yeah, it's close to $1 million project.
Capital planning has to approve these.
This one was approved. It was appropriated at the last annual town meeting.
Right. For how much?
Don't have with me.
No, it wasn't, okay. This is,
There was no contingency on this one? With a project that large, I mean, it kind of shocks me that we don't have, well, especially with all the change requests we've been seeing.
I got an email with these 2 articles in it.
And you don't know anything else? Okay.
Article 20 is an article relative to the bridge replacement project on West Meadow. And there are 3 property owners whose properties would be impacted either temporarily, for which an easement would be needed, or in some cases, in minor areas, permanently with the reconfiguration of the bridge. So we're required by Mass DOR regulations to go to a town meeting and seek easements, temporary and permanent, and there'd be an associated plan that's drafted that shows them. Outreach has been made for well over a year now with each of the 3 owners, and everybody is a willing participant. Originally, you'll probably recall, the discussion was to close the bridge entirely and have everybody on the opposite side of the West Meadow Bridge have to come in through Ashby. That didn't last very long. Public safety alone wasn't going to let that happen, so the revised plan called for bringing a temporary bridge in, which then changed the footprint of the project considerably, which required these types of easements. So expected by the time of the town meeting to know whether or not these easements are being granted for a nominal fee of $1, which is the expectation based on conversations, or something more than that or different than that, but we do need to go through this process. Article 21, which is coming in from the Housing Authority, and this is an article that seeks to authorize the selectmen to sign and deliver an option agreement and enter into an agreement with Soldier On Incorporated, Massachusetts, not a nonprofit corporation, regarding the project at Atwood Acres, regarding the residual piece of land at that location for the purpose of veterans housing. I did have some discussion with one of the members of the Housing Authority regarding a concern that I registered on the fact that a company name is listed in the article, and you can't, unless you've already gone through a procurement process and identified them based on a competitive bid.
Yeah.
you can't list a company.
I don't think that there's, Chaz, you might know more, but I don't think that there's any money going to go to Soldier On.
So they're not gonna, there's no money, they're not gonna get paid for the work that they do with the veterans?
All we're asking is for the land to be extracted to give the Board of Selectmen, it has to be approved in land court, and it's going to take a while. So before, once we have this piece going, then we'll have that piece go, that piece following it. But for right now, we wanted to be able to allow that to go to court so that we can get the land.
Soldier On is not going to, they're going to do this all for the love of country and...
But I think more simply, whether Soldier On is doing it for a fee or for love of country, they're not necessary then for this part, because they're not going to court. They're not a party to the land issue in land court, so
No.
I just
They have
don't know why
nothing to
they'd be
do with
listed
it.
here.
Then they shouldn't be listed then.
If I may.
They might preclude them from being involved in any case later that will be money, because we're pre-selecting without a bid.
There's not a bid for this.
Right,
It's,
that's the concern.
no, you're not hearing what I'm trying to say. If we own a piece of land and we say that piece of land is available, then we can contract with any one of these, but it's not a contract in terms of this is how much Soldier On costs versus this is how much this one costs, and that's, there's not a cost involved, there's an agreement involved where they would then build on that land. And that's exactly what happened in the past with Atwood and with the other one.
Townsend Woods.
Townsend Woods, I'm sorry. But, so it's not that the town doesn't own the building, the town doesn't invest in the building. Soldier On, just like the other two housing projects.
I understand the mechanics of it, and I guess,
Well,
we're not-
I think it's easy
But I think it went out
enough.
to bid before.
yeah, well, I think council will do the final review of the warrant anyway.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
However it
It's
comes
like,
out, it comes out.
this
I think
is-
the intent is understandable. You need to get that piece extricated from its current status.
Exactly.
That is correct. That is
Exactly.
correct. And all we're asking for is to allow that to proceed to land court so
Right.
that that piece can be done so that we can then start working on the other piece as far as.
Right. So if we give this to town council, I'm sure they're gonna be able to sort that out in about 5 minutes.
They'll know what the intention is.
Yeah.
That's number 21. Next, we get to what start becoming unnumbered articles. The first is stabilization article for the stabilization fund proper. The next for cap stabilization.
What did we do for those last year?
200,000 for cap stabilization, and I think at the end of the annual, we did 25,000 for stabilization, just to have some amount of money going in. Just to show a positive trend instead of a negative.
Flat.
Oh, and this will be based on whatever we're left with at the...
We'll probably not want to play with stabilization proper at this meeting because we still have snow and ice. And the amount of free cash that'll be left at the end of this special town meeting, we need to hold in reserve until the spring town meeting for snow and ice purposes, which is, again,
We're going to have it used up before Christmas.
So then why do
That's
we,
great.
so then why do we even have that one on here?
they're there, my understanding, and it's something I've been familiar with, is they're there just to keep it in people's eyesight, just so they're familiar with the fact that we have a stabilization and we should be considering putting money into it. So they've appeared in both, the stabilization one has appeared in both the specials and the annuals since prior to my arrival, and
And that gives us the opportunity to do so. If we have the money,
you
we
could.
can. If we don't have the article, then we
Right.
can't.
So it's a standing thing that you just put on. Okay, I got you. And you said that there were maybe a couple of other money things?
There are. There's going to be the treasurer collector's office. You had authorized that they could hire an outside agent to come in and put some time in to keep the pieces moving, get the books closed. So there was a fee associated with that.
So was that professional service?
It was, correct.
Do we know what amount?
Less than $10,000. I'll have the exact. And the other is the placeholder article for the IT, second phase of the IT project, the residual after the phase paid for by the grant.
Oh, because the grant didn't cover it all.
Well, yeah, the grant, yeah, the $300,000 grant we sought, that would have covered it all, which became a $50,000 grant.
So how much?
It's going to be, I believe, the last number I saw something from Acuity today, is probably 85,000 to do the balance of the project above the roughly 50 that we've got on hand.
Have we actually implemented any of it so far?
Some of it has begun, but we purchased some of the hardware, some of the materials, but we're waiting to contract Acuity. I think I reported at the last meeting that for the better part of a month, the money hadn't hit our accounts. The state was saying that it had been sent, the wire had gone, it couldn't be located.
I don't remember that.
The state finally acknowledged that it was sitting in somebody's outbox and had not been actually sent.
Checks in the mail?
Well, the check's in my outbox. Within a day, and we got the apology letter that, we're sorry we said we sent it and we didn't. So Bassam, I think, was appropriately not moving ahead without the money in hand. Lori wouldn't have allowed him to contract without the money in hand, even with the grant award letter. So I do have a proposal that came in from Acuity today. There are a couple things that didn't make sense on it that Bassam's reached back out to them for them to tweak, so I can probably have it emailed tomorrow or maybe by the end of the week so you guys can take a look at what's going on.
Yeah, I just wondered what the status of.
And it does include the Office 365 option.
Does the 85,000 cover the Office 365 option?
It does, including 1 year of the fee, of the ongoing fee. It also covers, I think, roughly 10 grand in phone work. So the town hall phone system, I think, the discussion, actually it was department head meeting, I apologize, when it was spoken of. The old system in the police and the fire station, which is cutting edge compared to what we're operating off of here, which is circa 1986. We're going to inherit that, and it's going to be voice over. So the amount is rolled into this project as well to be able to accomplish that.
I had a couple of other things that I didn't know if they needed to go on, and it's just because I'm the liaison with the library trustees.
Yep.
I know they were having some issues with their lighting, and they were waiting for an estimate. Can we put a placeholder in here just in case that estimate comes out to be, well, I mean, we apparently didn't even have the money to do the assessment of the
Well,
problem.
That issue's been addressed. That shouldn't have happened.
Okay.
I did meet with,
That's good.
Trustee Templeton and staff over in the Council on Aging.
Okay,
and
so
the
there's at
library.
least money to be able to do that.
To do that. That's going to
Okay.
be moving forward, correct.
And they had also said that there were continuing problems with the HVAC system?
Apparently there have been since the beginning.
Since forever.
And one of the things that we talked about was being able to carve out specific amount of time for Mark to be there, to come into whatever list of things they have, and for Bassam to be there on the IT side for whatever list of things they have, instead of the expectation that they have access to those two people, but they don't know when.
I guess
to what extent.
the reason I'm addressing the HVAC right now is there something is there an amount of money that needs to go to looking at that system and finding out what needs to be fixed, changed, whatever?
I'm not aware of that. When I talk to Mark, he says that there are issues that happen occasionally that he has to go in and then call the contractor, Brandon Sullivan, to come in, and there are others that are things that are more simple things that he can fix. I've not been told by anybody that there's a need for an appropriation, though.
Okay.
So if you want, we can place a placeholder for lighting and HVAC for library.
Yeah, can we do that, just to make sure that's covered?
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Because it's a little confusing to me why we still have those kinds of issues, because Mark got trained on that a long, long time ago.
Yeah, it's less an issue of operator error, as I understand it, and more an issue of equipment failure.
Then we have to address it with the company. I mean, that's 9 years. Okay?
Yes, and I think that's been an ongoing,
I mean, I'm
Ongoing
saying
issue
that, does my
and
board
ongoing
agree with
attempt.
that?
Yes.
Cindy?
I'm not quite sure I know what's going on, so that's okay.
Some,
I'm just,
things aren't working and haven't been working right for some time, and it's,
I'll get a text message in August that it's 92 outside and 95 inside,
okay.
things like that. That's
and
not
I
how
mean, it's all
built.
So we need to
computer-
fix that.
It's all computerized and all that, but, you know, if something keeps failing,
Then we should fix it.
then we should fix it.
It's
Yeah.
simple.
Correct.
Thank you.
Certainly. So from there, we end up in general bylaws and adoptions, which the first is on page 5, the unregistered car bylaw. So the way this is currently written, it changes the enforcement authority from Board of Selectmen to police chief or designee. It changes the investigating authority and the writer of the complaint to police chief or designee. And it leaves the Board of Selectmen as the party that would send the certified letter to the owner of the land. It does have that there would be the penalty of $100 per day, and the earlier discussion that we had was about it being able to be done by the non-disposition.
I just want to pause for just a second.
Yes,
Rep. Harrington walked in. I'm assuming, Rep. Harrington, that you came to talk about the housing. I think
the dollar short.
I think we're all set on that.
Okay.
Basically, what we said was, even though it says Soldier On, the concern by some was that there wasn't a competitive bid, and I explained that Soldier On, there's not a money thing, but we decided we'll just give it to town council to
Okay.
write it more appropriately if it's not the way that it should be.
Okay, that sounds good. I think you know, though, from being in the presentation too, that there isn't really a financial risk associated for the town. But in addition, and I think you're aware of this too, we did meet with several of the vendors, contractors that offer these type of veterans housing projects. And so there was an opportunity to present to us, not a formal bid process, but sort of to give us an idea of how they each operated, so.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think it's any secret that was the preferred outfit for
Right,
for
and it's for the
that.
preferred outfit, it appears, of the Secretary of Veterans Affairs office as well. When I spoke with them and explained that's who we thought we were going, they said that would be our top choice, so.
So we left it as, you know, we'll give it to town council, and I'm sure they'll fix it according to what your intent is, which is really to get the land court part of it straightened out.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Next, you'll see Town Properties Committee. The couple of changes following along with the prior discussion in a board meeting is just clarifying in section 127.1 basic charge that it's advising instead of assisting, just to make it more clear that it's an advisory body. Next, you would see at the last sentence of that very section on the next page, it had previously said annually appointed or reappointed at the Board of Selectmen's first scheduled meeting in March, to be changed to on or before the last week of June to make it consistent with other board appointments.
Do we have a term?
They're
Annually appoint a seven-member
it's
committee.
each year. It's an annual appointment.
Well, but it says annually appoint or reappoint. for how many years in a row can you be reappointed is my question.
One. It says annually.
Right, but there isn't a limit on how many times you can be annually appointed or reappointed. So right now, there's not a limit that says after 3, you're done, or
And
after 4,
if
you're
I'm
done.
remembering correctly, one of the committees had people on it that have been on it for,
The Flag Committee was the one we had spoken about,
Right.
had been on since the beginning.
since the very beginning, which doesn't really, I don't know, I think you should have some kind of turnover.
It's a tricky thing because
Or
you
a
don't,
reapplication, one or the other, you know? But I don't think it should be guaranteed that you're on there forever.
the other side of it is you don't want people to feel uncomfortable about having to say, hey, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore.
Exactly.
You know, if they know they've got, I don't know, hypothetically, if somebody's got how many months left and they're counting the days.
Nobody, I know. Yeah.
I know, like, the FinCom, they have to, what the moderator does is they're on staggered appointments of some kind.
Exactly.
But they have to apply, that, John, it requires them to
Yeah.
fill out
So I guess I'm
a
thinking
volunteer
of the
form.
same thing.
But this says annually, so if that would be,
They can say whatever
At the
you
time,
would like to propose it to
as
say.
far as
What would you like
functioning.
it to say?
I think that they should have the opportunity to apply, just like you just said.
The same as
It would be
FinCom?
annually.
Yeah.
Just
I
keep
mean,
it
this is
consistent.
annually, so that it
Can
would
you
be,
adjust it so that that
Just
is
keep it the same as
reflected?
everything else.
Is that the wish of the board?
Yeah.
or would just leaving it at annually just imply that? That,
I would rather have it spelled out.
Oh, okay.
Because otherwise, and I think the FinCom does spell that out.
Gotcha. All right.
And I mean, town council's gonna look at it anyway, so.
I don't remember.
Next, you'll see the, next article is the town clerk seeking to change the locations for the legal postings for town meeting. The Police Communication Center to say police station, and removing North Middlesex High School. There used to be a bulletin board at the front, there's no longer as obvious a place. So removing that and having Harbor Fire Station and West Townsend Reading Room, in addition to the Harbor Church that is currently one of the locations.
And there's no way that you can do that electronically, huh?
Put an electronic bulletin board there.
Well, no, but we have electronic bulletin board. I mean, a copy of the warrant, we can put that on the website as well.
And we do.
Yeah.
But right now, the charter requires 4 locations, 1 in each of the villages, so-called.
Is there a law?
Homework, John.
Is there mass general law as well?
I do not know.
Are you taking notes?
Actually, John, I stand corrected, I think it's a bylaw, so you might be off the hook
Town
until
general
next
bylaw
time.
chapter, it's a bylaw, yeah,
Yeah.
it's not on the charter, it's a
Okay.
bylaw.
I think it's in the charter.
It could be in the charter.
And again, town council's gonna look at
Gotcha.
it too, so.
The next town council is currently working with the police chief and the deputy on an enforcement of parking violations bylaw. We currently don't have the authorization legally to enforce parking violations.
Well, we
Oh.
need to.
Oh, look, there's one for
We have a parking
pawnbrokers.
clerk, wait a minute, we have a parking clerk, but,
Correct.
and we pay her $5 a year, I think?
I think it might be 15.
15? Oh, she got a raise. Wow. But she can't, there's no, nobody gets a parking ticket.
It's the honor system.
Are you not issuing parking tickets? Warnings.
Where does that happen? So that I don't park there?
Mostly it's the handicap,
Okay,
mostly handicap.
okay,
In winter parking, yeah. Winter parking ban.
okay.
And the next also comes in, and it's multiple pages, comes in from the police chief, and this is creating a new town general bylaw regarding pawnbrokers. And
Do we have any in town?
chief,
Maybe some of the jewelry stores could be considered.
They buy you jewelry.
We buy gold.
Yep.
This is very near and dear to my heart. I think it's extremely important to put some real good laws around that.
I thought you were going to say you're a pawnbroker.
No, within months of when my husband passed away, I left my jewelry on my dresser. I'd been cleaning that day, and I left to go to the store. When I came back, my house had been broken into. They took my wedding ring and my engagement ring and my mother's ring, and they were never found. They found some of the other stuff thrown on the side of the road. And what I was told was that if it's a reputable pawn shop that they get taken to, they won't take anything that looks like it might have been stolen. But more likely what they did was just crushed them and sold them for their weight in gold at places like the hotels that have these cash for gold kinds of things. And I think as long as you have something that allows them to do that without any kind of documentation of who owns the property, then it's encouraging people to break into people's houses and take things that are of huge sentimental value. So, like I said, it's very close to my heart, and I will never forgive the person that did that, ever.
In town cities, they have it. They're very strict. They take pictures of things when they come in, so even if it passes through, somebody else buys it, they will have to have a picture of it so you can identify it and then follow the path.
And the police did what they could, and they were very good about it, and they tried, but you can only do so much, you know.
Yeah, there's at least one establishment in town right now that I know is doing all of this plus a little bit more voluntarily. So if somebody does bring a piece of jewelry in, it's photographed, the person walking in the door with it is photographed, their license is photographed, there's...
And that's what it should be, because that protects people's property.
Sure.
You know?
So this would have to go through, and has already been sent out to council, obviously, but it's a pretty standard version.
I know this was attempted by, I think this looks a little larger, but Chief Marshall had attempted this, and it was voted down at town meeting. I think it was, maybe it was more broad.
I'll tell my story at town meeting.
What's that?
Maybe I'll tell my story at town meeting.
Well, I think because I have to look at this more closely. I think there were concerns that it included, consignment shops. Like, we have a consignment shop down in West Townsend, but they have to take, every time somebody can bring in lots of things that are, like, clothing, could bring in a carload full of clothing. Every single item of clothing would have to be, take a picture. I mean, when it would cost more to do these things than it would to meet, than to stay in business. And I'm wondering,
I don't think
places
you're
like,
pawning that stuff, though.
okay, this is only referring to like pawning. Or,
Persons who engage in or carry on the business of lending money on mortgages, deposits, or pledges of wearing apparel, jewelry, ornaments, household goods.
Oh,
So
it's
it's
the same
lending
thing.
money on.
okay, it's only that, it doesn't, that's all it applies to. So it wouldn't apply to like scrap metal.
Continue reading, or of purchasing such property on the condition of selling the same back again at a stipulated price. When the property so mortgaged, pledged, or purchase is deposited with the lender, they must be a licensed pawnbroker.
Okay, so, all right. I think the last time this was
It was more about a second-hand goods.
was about, it included consignments,
Yeah.
it included like MGS metals, and it's like, okay, you can't, you just will put somebody out of business to meet the requirement. They'll spend more time doing this than it will take to purchase and sell.
Okay, moving on.
The end table that they just took in, okay.
Gotcha. The next and final article is coming in from the planning board, and this is temporary moratorium on recreational marijuana establishments. You'll likely recall that effective at the end of December of this year, our current moratorium expires, and without having gone to extend it, we would be left as of January 1st without any zoning protection at all for,
So that would mean somebody could
marijuana.
just rent a,
any place that was zoned commercial that
They
would
have to
otherwise allow
they
us
have to meet all the other requirements of
Right.
the commission.
of a commercial, the only real dimensional requirement of the Cannabis Control Commission is the 500 feet from a K through 12 school. That's all that's left in those final
Right,
regulations,
but-
so if they're within,
But the people have to, they can't just, like, I can't just say, well, I'm going to just start selling pot tomorrow.
no, you'd have to be in a commercial zone where you'd otherwise be able to conduct a
But
commercial
even to
activity.
be, you have to do a lot of other things other than just,
Oh, most definitely.
I'm
Right.
just gonna
Yeah,
go
you still
sell
have to
pot
be
tomorrow.
licensed by the
you
town
have to
hall
go
through
through
that
so many
process.
others. It's
Sure.
not like that simple that,
Right.
oh, they can just come in and sell pot. My real concern that I have about this is that if the moratorium doesn't pass, is there a bylaw prepared in order to allow, because if people don't want a moratorium, they want to be able to have the recreational marijuana available, that they want to be able to as soon as possible, and they don't want this moratorium, is there a bylaw prepared that's establishing a zone in which we can, that a company can come in and put in an
Just to-
establishment?
just-
I'm really concerned about that, because
Yeah,
if we
that's-
don't, then that,
all
we'll
right.
have to jump through a lot more hoops in 10 days.
It's a valid question, and Lance is here. Lance, can you just briefly talk about how the process works and why we're going about it the way we are?
Yes, ma'am. As Jim mentioned, we do have a moratorium in place that expires December the 31st. The planning board has put together a draft bylaw that regulates it from a zoning standpoint. We have also gone ahead and put together a bylaw that is for prohibiting recreational marijuana establishments in the town of Townsend. I have spoken with all of our surrounding towns. Would be more than happy to give you a briefing on what our local communities are going. But our plan to move forward is to extend the moratorium and then to put on the next town election a bylaw that would prohibit recreational marijuana establishments in the town of Townsend. If that passes, we then have the same zoning bylaw that will go to special town meeting, or annual town meeting, where we're going to, if we have 2/3, then it's prohibited. If that passes, we will move on the zoning restrictions for it. If that fails at either the ballot, or if that fails in the town meeting, then we will have the zoning bylaw for recreational marijuana. So ultimately, the citizens of Townsend are the ones that are going to determine whether or not we have recreational marijuana establishments. Groton,
Pretty sure they already did.
they did not. Groton voted to go ahead and approve question 4. Their citizens have just voted to not allow any recreational retailers within the town of Groton. The town of Lunenburg, which voted to approve recreational marijuana, basically is doing the exact same thing that we're doing. So, I think that when we say that the electorate voted in favor of it, they voted in favor of selling recreational marijuana in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and having recreational marijuana establishments, but not necessarily in their town. And so that's why you see the votes in Groton being different from ballot 4 versus what Groton's actually doing.
So just to clear that up, because that was some question I've had from several people, is that just because you voted yes doesn't mean you have to accept it. You can vote no to prevent.
Correct.
Okay, because I thought legally there's some question as to the validity of that.
Right. I mean, we as a legislative body cannot unilaterally go ahead and, at a town meeting with 2/3 majority, go ahead and prohibit marijuana. It has to go on the ballot, and the exact same bylaw that is on the ballot has got to be at town meeting, and it's got to be approved in the exact language to be valid.
So that's the handout you gave us.
And yes, I gave you the handout. That's the guide to municipalities in terms of what's required by law. What we're doing is exactly what Lunenburg is doing, with the exception that Lunenburg has their town meeting before their election. So if they pass a 2/3 bylaw prohibiting, if it fails at the election, then they also have like we do, another bylaw prepared as a backup
Okay.
For allowing it.
for allowing it.
Okay.
So today, the planning board does have 2 bylaws, one allowing it, one prohibiting it, and then we will probably in the January timeframe have a public hearing on that. We did have a public hearing on the moratorium, and we went through the process that we're going to go through for it.
Sheila?
I just have a question, and I regret to say I'm not as up on the whole marijuana situation
Okay.
as it stands today, but early on, I know when it was talked about these bylaws and these moratoriums, there was also another move afoot for towns that engaged in that to not get the funding that was going to come from the tax benefit of the new law. And I know that was being bantered about, and Marty Walsh was very forthright in saying, don't, put it all in our backyard. You're not willing to share, you're not willing to, you shouldn't be receiving any benefit. But I don't remember anything in the budget that coincided with that, but that was a move afoot, that towns that have these bylaws did not reap the benefit of the tax. So that's a concern. It didn't happen last year in the budget, but the Cannabis Commission hadn't really gone through the whole process. So I wouldn't be surprised if it rears its ugly head again this year or next year now.
At least in budget.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised because there was sort of a big between the towns that would and the towns that wouldn't.
I think the resolution of that through the Cannabis Control Commission's final regulations that they promulgated was very much akin to the meals tax, local option meals tax.
It's a local option tax.
If you allow recreational or medical marijuana in your community and it's regulated in accordance with what was DPH, it is now the Cannabis Control Commission, you then can pass at the legislative body a regulation that allows you to tax locally up to 3% of their gross sales of all products. So if your community wants it, you can get the money. If your community says no, then you can't get the money. So the way that was handled was it
Right.
became specifically local option to your community.
But even aside from the local option, there was the hallmark of why it was such a good idea was that the overriding tax that was then going to go to the state would be passed on to the cities and towns. So I think
Like the lottery or whatever?
Yeah, I think you can have the local option on it, like the meals tax, but I just would want to sort of, I just be aware that this could be coming up again, that it's sort of like with the gambling situation.
Or even the lottery formula.
Yeah,
Right, the
yeah,
lottery.
but the gambling thing was if you were within so many, a town contiguous to or a city contiguous to an area that would have a casino,
Right.
you would reap the benefit was like the proposal, but if you weren't gonna get it, that kind of thing. Or you were gonna get a higher benefit
Sure.
if you were in a budding community. So I wouldn't be surprised if because the more urban areas that are gonna probably have the bulk of these
So-
are gonna want the money.
Based on what I'm hearing, because you said recreational or medicinal,
Correct.
all right? Lance, are we dealing with just recreational?
We already have a bylaw in place allowing medicinal marijuana.
And that would not change?
That would not change.
Okay.
The
So-
only thing that the wording will do is the state defined recreational marijuana establishments as a retail outlet, cultivation, test lab, R&D, and to be precise, Groton basically is only allowing cultivation, R&D, and test. They are not allowing any retail distribution.
And so they tailored their bylaw
So that's a way around it.
To be precise on Groton is that Groton last spring basically put into effect zoning regulations regulating the zoning for marijuana establishments. Their board of selectmen, which they later changed to select a board, went ahead and put an amendment in place to essentially only allow those 3 types of recreational marijuana establishments that I mentioned And that went to the public hearing. That also had to go for a ballot vote. And then it had to go to a town meeting where it had to have 2/3 approval, which it did.
I guess a simple way on that, Wayne, is if you're a yes on 4 community, you have to allow all of those types of establishments unless you regulate it, as Lance said, with a bylaw that goes to town meeting and the ballot. You can't, so Groton couldn't say yes to the 3 things and no to the dispensing without having those 2 votes, because they were yes on 4.
Right, understood. Thank you.
Well, I think doing it this way makes sense because it gives people local control.
It
I
gives,
mean,
it gives the citizens the
you know,
choice.
it's one thing saying, well, it's okay in terms of the vote that we had across the state, we don't have a problem with it, but what do we do in our town? And there's pros and cons to it. Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, is there any concern of the possibility that the moratorium wouldn't be extended?
There's always concern, so the answer is yes.
What that could do then is, as of December 31st, but before a zoning article gets drafted, voted, and voted at the ballot, leave the town exposed.
Which is I just.
What do we have now?
We've had so much time to work on this bylaw, and many towns are, the mayor of Northampton even was the first customer because of in order to get the tax dollars when that passed. But anyway, we've just had so much time to get these things going, and that to keep extending it, it's like.
The town passed the moratorium the last time,
Right.
so, you know.
As did every, I think almost every town in Massachusetts passed them.
Pepperell has no moratorium in place.
All right, so your concern is that December whatever.
My concern is that, that on the special town meeting, if the moratorium doesn't pass, that we have, that there should be a bylaw vote for something, to be a backup. If the townspeople say, no, I don't want a moratorium, let's move this along, we should have a bylaw. Why don't we have a bylaw? And then in order, on the floor, as we often do, to amend things, will the planning board be able to present bylaw opportunities for whatever the townspeople are actually asking for that? We haven't had, even if there's been posted public meetings, as you know, a lot of people don't go to them. But that town meeting is some people come out of the woodwork and we really don't know the pulse of the town, other than, all I know is that there was a lot of people voted in favor of recreational marijuana, and they might be very shocked that we're going in the opposite direction. They may not know, because there hasn't been any publicity other than the mandatory posting of public hearings. There hasn't been publicity on either side of the issue. So I'm concerned that on the night of the special town meeting, if you're hoping to have, I know the planning board, you're hoping to have a moratorium and you're hoping to move forward with a ban even, but if the townspeople in a couple weeks say, oh, no, I want to have a bylaw.
We're not moving forward with a ban during the special town meeting.
No. Okay, so if the moratorium, so what I'm saying is if the moratorium doesn't pass, are we going to just allow the moratorium that we currently have to expire and have an open season, or is there will you have a bylaw prepared to present to town meeting so that we can have a valid, a functional zoning bylaw for marijuana, either to have it or to ban it?
I'm confused, don't we have one already?
Medical.
No.
Just for medical?
Just for
The
medical.
moratorium
Okay.
expires 12/31.
So if
If
I'm
we don't
hearing-
vote for the moratorium, then it's open season on marijuana on January 1st in the town of Townsend.
Okay,
I just want to
so
know, do we have a backup plan?
am I hearing you correctly that you're suggesting that we have another article for a bylaw that we could end up passing over if that moratorium in December
Yeah, I'm saying,
passes?
it's too late for, if they're not prepared for that, my question and my concern is the planning board prepared for the moratorium to fail? and that the townspeople say, no, I want marijuana available, I want this, I don't want a moratorium.
January
Let's move
1st,
on.
we want it.
Is the planning board prepared for or they don't want a moratorium, they want it up or down? I'm not saying that that's necessarily in favor or against. I mean, I'm in favor, but, I mean, people know that. But if the townspeople go one way or the other, I don't want a moratorium, I either want it up or down, January 1st. And are you prepared
So what happens?
to have a bylaw as a backup plan? Or if the moratorium fails, oh well, open season, January 1st.
I'm sure that town council has been dealing with this across all of their folks. So why don't we present that question to town council?
The planning board, in order for the planning board to have that safety backup bylaw, they would need to have publicly heard it. And I don't know that there's still time, right?
So to answer your question precisely, we have a draft of a recreational marijuana bylaw that the board has reviewed and the chief has commented on. So we have that draft. But before we would be able to bring that to a town meeting, of course, we would have to have we'd have to have a public hearing, which has to be posted for 14 days in advance. And I don't know if we have enough runway between now and December 13th to wait 2 weeks before we can even have a public hearing. Because the cutoff for the warrant is when?
Well,
Today.
Oh, you can place an article in the warrant, and between now and the 13th, you do have time to publicly notice and hold a public hearing.
Yeah.
It can be done. The question is, does the planning board have the interest in meeting and taking such a vote? I mean, I have not yet seen the article that you're talking about, but it could even be something as restricted as the medical is, which is a very narrowly defined swath of land that could be argued makes it practically unlikely that somebody would become established, but at least would give you the protection to not have something opening up, on Main Street.
it sounds to me like it might be beneficial for you to have a real quick get-together with town council, maybe with Jim and town council, just to talk about, how you'd time that out and get it done. You may have to call a meeting right away of your board, but if that's the direction that you want to go in, as a fail-safe.
So why? Let's see. Why don't we do? Here's my thought process. My thought process is we have our next planning board meeting is on November the 26th, which is this coming Monday.
Mm-hmm.
So let's, at that time, initiate a posting for a public hearing. And then I will also go ahead and discuss it with town council. Okay? Now,
I just want to make sure all the puzzle pieces fit together, okay?
There is the fact that, given the fact that, and this is what Lunenburg, because Lunenburg does have the same issue in terms of a window as well. It's not as large of a window, but their comment was they don't see an operator coming in here with the risk of a bylaw basically damaging their business.
You're also not going to retroactively zone a business out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's...
I would rather be safe.
Yeah, so I will go ahead and ask the board to basically, let's schedule a public hearing, when we meet. We have the bylaw, and then move forward with that.
And feel free to, work with
Okay.
Jim. Talk to town
The
council.
other protection that exists as well is if there's a licensed operator that's already been approved by the Cannabis Control Commission to sell or grow or test recreational marijuana, they would still need to have an address in a community where it's allowed, and then they would still need to get a letter from the executive board saying that there had been a host community agreement negotiated.
So they have to,
There's still several.
to apply, they have to have an address on the
Right.
application. So
Right, well, to get approved, I mean, there are several steps in the approval. One of them is to show that they've got an address and that they've gotten the
I believe the application is
HCA.
like $100,000.
It's a little less for these guys than the
That's
original medical.
chump change.
No, that's
Pocket change.
it's not gonna matter to them.
So I just don't want it to seem like we're being alarmist or overly alarmist, because there are those other safe.
But I would rather, you know, I would feel comfortable if you guys talked to the town council and talked about how can we get this set up for this meeting and make sure that we have all of the safeguards in effect.
Okay. So Jim, I do have a meeting set up on the 28th at 2:30. I'll forward it to you.
And we don't need to be in the same room to have the call. We can have a conference call with council at any time that works for you.
Okay. So then we might do this sooner than later then.
May.
Now wait for the 28th.
You may.
Okay.
And that is that.
That is
The draft
that.
warrant.
Wow.
So the ask of you this evening is, was originally going to be that you vote to approve the warrant this evening in draft form, subject to council's final review, and to sign out of session. But if we're thinking of having a meeting next Tuesday, which I know the chair and I have spoken briefly about, there would be time to actually have it finalized and have been reviewed by council, and on the 26th next week, 27th next week rather, have it executed and posted, because we would just need it posted by the 28th, which is the 14-day window of required for a special town meeting
We had
posting.
talked about a meeting next week just to make sure that we've got all our extra little things
Yeah.
done. Did we talk about that one as a work session? Primarily?
Part of the thing, some of the things that you and I were going back and forth about would have been work session, but
Yeah. I thought we had some other updates too.
but that would allow, because the date has moved that 2 extra days, this
Does
will
that
allow
work
us.
for you?
Yeah, I'm home that day, so.
Okay. Cindy?
Tentatively.
Okay.
Excellent. So there's no action required this evening on this then. Next, Madam Chair, is under Town Administrator Report and Update Process used for Conservation Commission appointment and recommendations. Excuse me, I skipped one. I skipped the volunteer response form.
Okay. Discussion regarding volunteer response form. I just wanted to bring up that I think it probably could use a revision. I don't think it leaves very much room for anyone to fill in, for people to fill in, especially if they want, let's say there's 2 or 3 different groups that they might want to join. You might have different background
Yeah,
for each one.
I was thinking that as well. There's needs to be beefed up to have a resume type.
And, well, I would just say attach a resume and you know, experience and skills, all right, as well. I don't know, I think we're working toward having to do maybe just a review of the whole way that we do volunteer things, and in particular, the way that we do appointments, that this board does appointments. So we might be talking about a revision to the current Board of Selectmen policy and kind of consolidating that with the other things. Jim, you sent out a few different things, and they seem to kind of contradict each other in a way.
Yeah, they're all over the place.
Yeah, so I think that's something we need to work with town council on. Actually, where it comes to that, I'm not sure if it might be Labor Council.
It would be Labor Council, and that's why, Madam Chair and members
We'll
of the
take
board.
a stab at it.
Yeah, when you sent the email out, I was actually sitting with Adam. It was the day he came out for the department head meeting, and his recommendation, which I took as a good sign, was, Jim, why don't you do the legwork on this, because otherwise, if you give it to Labor Council, we're going to have to bill you. So that's why the document that I shared with you was something that I had put together.
So, Maybe at next week's meeting, we could talk about that more, you have that in better shape
I do.
by then?
I do, yep.
Okay, all right. Town administrator updates and reports. Process used for Conservation Commission appointment recommendations. Yes.
Could I just make a quick comment on volunteer response form?
Sure.
Comment is as follows. So first of all, I have heard from many people that have put in voluntary response forms that there's no acknowledgement. It sort of like goes into a black hole. So, you know, if we could just have, when someone puts in a volunteer response form, a reply back, thank you for dropping this off or for submitting this, is one comment. Then the second comment is, I would love it if elected officials, or just restricted to department heads, basically we put them on a shared folder so that when we have as a board a vacancy of some kind or an appointment that we need, that we could just go to one spot, look at all of the volunteer response forms to engage.
I'm with you. I mean, it says something about a data bank, and being a database person, I have yet to see the data bank that we truly have, okay? I suspect it's a file cabinet, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. Those were my two comments.
Okay, Jim, did you
Yes.
want to?
There's a document in your packets that correlates with this number. It's a memo to me from Lindsay Butler, the Conservation Administrator, on behalf of the Townsend Conservation Commission. Multiple-page document with several attachments. I know that.
Now I can't find it.
It looks like this.
Here. That was in the addendum packet. That was your.
Oh, okay.
And I see that we have Mr. Turgeon and Ms. Hill here, and Mr. LeClaire here from the Conservation Commission, and we
here.
have our conservation agent as well. Looking happy to be here as ever. So, whatever your pleasure, you can have them speak to it or work directly off the paper.
Well, I mean, thank you for doing this. This helps. So there's quite a bit of time in between, huh? So it's been open since August 9th.
This process, Madam Chair, points to one of the, I think, if not misunderstanding, at least misapplication of the process, because the way our policies and charter and law, in fact, read general law, is that when there's a vacancy in a multi-member board that's appointed by the select board, they're to provide notice to you as a board, and then within 30 days, if you've not made the appointment, the remaining members of that board can make the appointment. So in this case, as has been custom, this isn't something that was just done this way this time. Notice went to the town clerk. So that doesn't really fit with having given you the notice that's required. Eventually, it makes its way to you, and in this case, it did eventually make its way to you.
But it's like it's been in the dark the whole
Right,
time.
what you got is, we've got this vacancy, and here's a person we'd like. So it
Yeah,
didn't really.
we've got the
Right, so
appointment
it
request,
really
yeah.
didn't, it really didn't take the form of here's notice and you've got 30 days to take your action before we're then able to take ours. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that first, because it did go first to the town clerk, as you see near the bottom of the page.
I mean, I think it's nobody's, well, I don't want to say that, but it's certainly not the Conservation Commission's fault that they did what they did the way that they did it, because it's the way it's always been done. But that's kind of like, what did I call that? Niagara Falls? I just...
When she starts quoting the Three Stooges, I get nervous.
Yeah, well, the way we've always done things is a trigger for me, just like Niagara Falls was for the Three Stooges. So it's not a reason. It's simply a fact. So it's nobody's fault that we're where we are at, but I think good can come from it. I think we need to, as a board, really talk about our appointments, because they are our appointments. And that doesn't mean that we would not listen to recommendations of the folks that are doing it now. But it's not just this one, it's other policies, and we've been talking about that. That's one of our goals too, is to look at the policies, and as it came up, this is a good time for us to start looking at it. We'll have a discussion next week on all of the parts that don't fit together, and I think that we just need to make it understandable to everybody that this is the process that we need to follow. And once that comes clear, that's fine. I mean, I did look at some other towns. Oh golly, I'm not going to remember which town I found it. Oh, actually Dunstable has a really comprehensive policy around appointments that the Board of Selectmen makes, including the requirement to do the interviews with the folks that apply, and it's pretty comprehensive. I'd like to model where we're going maybe after something like that. I just think we need to be more diligent about how we do things. That's just my opinion.
It goes again with a volunteer response form. I've had several people say that they've submitted them and were never considered.
Or don't know if they
were considered.
Yeah.
So,
For this position, this opening?
specifically, I had people tell me that, yes. I don't have proof of that, but I was told.
Because I conveyed that as well as something that I had heard from the board at our last meeting at the...
That was the correspondence I had prior to the meeting. That's why I questioned it.
Which is why I then asked if that was the case, and that's some of what's contained in this memo, is that, well, I won't speak for it, it says what it says, but I don't know if you want to know. People shouldn't feel that. You know, so to the extent...
No, I understand it now, but that was a question I had, and I wanted to have it answered before.
Right, so to the extent that it happened, though, we need to...
Well, what it says is that they were all over the place. What it says is, you know, sometimes you might get them all and sometimes you might not. And who did they give the response form? I found 2 different volunteer response forms on our own website. They're totally different. I just did a search and I found one version here and another version there. So it's confusing, and I think we owe it to everybody to try to get rid of some of the confusion and solidify what we're doing and why we're doing it and what our qualifications for the different boards are. Maybe even going as far as a brief job description. And that would also help people that want to volunteer for something, because they look at the job description and they look at the kinds of things that they're going to have to deal with and say, is this a good fit for who I am and what my skills are? So that's what I'd just like to take it as work session, and let's keep going. How many people do you have on the board right now?
6.
Well, that's not ideal, because it's you could have split decisions. We'll try to make this as quick as we can then.
And I would just ask that you take the board's recommendation into consideration. We had one volunteer response form from when Amelia resigned to when we submitted the recommendation, and has been to every meeting since she submitted a volunteer response form. And that's pretty much the way things have progressed. Well,
And I understand.
That's a process that's been followed for quite some time. And then you had other questions, Wayne, last time about whether or not whether a married couple could serve on a board. Actually, the Conservation Commission had a married couple on it for at least several years while I was the agent. Stan Valatica and Michelle Cannon served, and they were married at the time. And Dave has done some research and found through MACC that there's no prohibition against a married couple serving on it.
It was just a question from,
Well, you asked it, and
Yep.
I'm just trying to.
I appreciate the answer, thank you.
And so, if you could just take into consideration the recommendation of the board, we take it seriously. We're looking for people who will both have a passion for protecting natural resources, but also a strong commitment to following the process and doing it with a serious commitment, like you showed at the last meeting with the way you conducted your investigation of the
Unregistered motor vehicles.
Motor vehicles. I mean,
Yes.
That's.
And I think that I want to take responsibility for, I think it's this board's responsibility, and it's our shortcoming that put us in the place that we're at right now. Because it should be fairly simple to know what the process is to fill a position on an appointed board. And 3 things that Jim pulled for us contradict each other. So that's on us. That's on us. It's not on you. Okay, so I want to get that process straightened out. It's our obligation to do that. Okay, and I apologize because you happen to be the board that we said, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on here? Okay, so we'll be fine, and we'll try to we'll do everything we can to move this along as quickly as we can for you.
And so as you move forward, will you be interacting with each of the boards just when if you do put together a job description, will you be working with each board to kind of develop?
Certainly that would be what we would want to do. We would want you to do that, you know? I mean, anybody that
I think we have to work together to do it, so.
you know, that takes an appointment, you know, it's like, what are you looking for? What are the qualifications? What are the skill sets that you would want? You know, certainly you're doing the job. Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's other appointed boards too, you know, planning looks maybe for a volunteer if somebody resigns, but it is an elected board, which is a little bit different. These are appointed boards, so. Jim?
Yes, I'm obviously Jim McClure, and I'm representing myself as an individual this evening, but 17 years ago, I was questioned to go out and get a handful of signatures, which is required to run for an elected position. I seriously had no clue what I was running for, what I was going to be doing when and if I got elected, assuming that I wouldn't win. I won the election.
You got what you asked for, huh?
I went after it. Now, we're laughing at it, that's okay, because this is kind of comical for me right now, because you got a full commission here that has an applicant, and you're not taking the proper protocol for this meeting to make it happen. With the proper protocol for the meeting should take place for further appointments. This is already in motion. This isn't something that started tonight. Now, I won the election that first time, and I had the pleasure of working with Michelle Cannon, bless her soul, and she was on conservation. And she told me that conservation had updated and expanded 100 feet from a sealed tank. And I said, you're on conservation, you're going 50 feet farther into the woods with a sealed tank. That doesn't make any sense to an installer. Long story short, I've been 17 years, I've seen it come and I've seen them go. You and I have had our share of agreements and disagreements, etc. But I feel that it's the responsibility of the selectmen to take the I've lost for the word here, but to take the opinion of the current commission and approve the volunteer at this time, and when it comes to the next volunteers, make sure you get your acts together for the future people that are going to volunteer for any committee. Because right now, we're looking to have this approved, we voted on it. This lady has attended, she's been on sidewalks, she's done all the stuff necessary, including the fact that she's been on multiple job sites with me over 20 years, and my number as a state television inspector is 123. I was in the second course. I have that with me right here. And that's how long I've been a Title V inspector. And to be able to sit there as our representatives as the town of Townsend, as a board of selectmen, and postpone this again, I just think that's unjustly being done.
I understand.
How long do you think it's gonna take us to make it?
I'm thinking a couple weeks.
Wouldn't that, pardon me, ma'am, my name is Dave Henkels and I'm the conservation agent here. Nice to meet you all. So, Jim, if you could please reemphasize what the 30-day provision is in terms of making the appointment and whether or not if we stretch this out 2 more weeks, that 30-day window will vanish on us?
Well, it's already vanished.
Well, then why
The problem is that we were never told.
Well, no, what you're suggesting, though, is you're going to push this out 2 more weeks. I'm suggesting to you, perhaps within that 2-week span that you're talking about, we're looking at the window closing.
It doesn't.
We've already been, we
I'm
have been
asking a
told.
question to the town manager.
To town administrator, and yes.
Through the chair.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, what will happen is now that the board has been put on notice by the receipt of the volunteer response form and the recommendation of the commission that once 30 days goes by, under the general law, the commission will have the authority to make the appointment. So any hold you have on that process does have a timeline.
So we don't have
I think that's
2
the
weeks.
point Dave's trying to make.
That's the point.
When did they notify us?
It's not.
2 weeks ago?
Yeah, it's not technically noticed until you meet, which would be 2 weeks ago, yeah.
2 weeks ago. And we have 30 days.
From 2 weeks ago.
From 2 weeks ago, so I'm saying 2 weeks from now.
How are we going to fill this position? If we don't allow them to fill the position with whom they've already selected?
I want the opportunity for us to look at our processes. I don't know if in 2 weeks or within that 2 weeks, I'm going to accept the position, the applicant that they're presenting to us.
Well, Madam Chair, is it up to you to make that decision solo?
Excuse me,
I'm asking
no, it's ours as a
Or you
board.
just sit yourself, that's all, I'm just
Yeah,
clarifying.
no, I'm speaking for myself.
Okay. Well, let me just, if I could, please, Madam Chair. My experience in terms of the people that are appointed to a commission throughout the state, the Commonwealth, many of these people come from a variety of different areas of life. Accounting, legal, landscaping, any number of people.
I agree.
But just to backtrack, the qualification piece that you're outlining as a predeterminant going forward, I strongly support that for all appointments you make, not only for the Conservation Commission. But back to my original point about the people that are ordinarily appointed to the commission. Your wish last week was to get people that were qualified, educated, have certifications, have a variety of different merits as such that would permit them an opportunity to be that much better a commissioner with those qualifications. Well, in my experience, I've seen a lot of people in a variety of different appointed positions in a number of different towns who are just, they don't have the qualifications. Based on what the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissioners has put out, one of their guidelines is, yeah, you want to get people that are enthusiastic and are willing to maintain the mandate of enforcement of the WPA and the local bylaw. And let me tell you, it's not an easy task, and I'm sure you're aware of that. I'm sure all three of you are aware of the fact that even attorneys today have a hard time probably interpreting and trying to gather information that is succinct and viable. So I'm looking at Ann here. She's been to 5 different meetings. She's been on a sidewalk. She's asked about MACC. She's been out with Jim, gosh knows how many times. I don't know. I'm also looking at the other members of the commission as well. We happen to be, this town, and I'm not from this town is blessed to have a scientist, engineer, botanist published as Mike Turgeon, who's commanding the ship for the commission. We are blessed because there's so few towns in the Commonwealth that have someone with his qualifications. Most of the people that are appointed are people like Ann and Jim and John and Karen and Amelia when she was here. You start from scratch. As Jim just said a moment ago, he went for election 17 years ago not knowing what the heck he was going to get himself into. Flash forward 17 years. I don't know if there's anyone I've met in my life, not that I've met many people that have Jim's expertise, but if I have a question about Title V, he's my go-to guy, and I'm not even from this town. I would go to him in a nanosecond. My point being is that everyone starts somewhere, and if you wait to get someone, and I really understand why you would like to look for people that have pre-qualifications, and as I said a moment ago, it's certainly an avenue that should have been taken some time ago.
Right.
Some time ago. That the applicability of the appointment process is for every commission, for every person that ever comes through this door and meets with you specifically to go through those qualifications. So if I can say one more thing, Wayne, please. There are, I can't emphasize enough how MACC, the Mass Association of Conservation Commissioners, reiterates the fact that the people that are appointed should not have an agenda at all. And that's one of the key qualifications in my simple way of thinking. As far as maintaining and upholding the WPA and the local bylaw, that comes with learning, going on site visits, looking at NOIs, looking at RDAs, asking questions, getting information from the agent, being cognizant of what the issues are in town in terms of the enforcement of those items, WPA and the local bylaw. So, all being said, I'm in favor, even though I have no vote. I think that Ann is a very qualified person. I'm confident that she'll learn the law. I'm confident she'll learn the science. Thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome.
I think we're getting a little off track on this because the reason we didn't discuss it last week was because there was questions I had on the appointment process, which, thank you for putting this together. This is exactly what I was looking for as far as what timing, what went down, and what was done. There was no question about her qualifications or any of her willingness to be on a volunteer. I appreciate everybody that volunteers for any board, because I've done it myself. So,
well, can I ask you, sir, what was the provocation for the discussion?
There was question on the process because it was informed that there was other people that applied.
Well, you told me just a moment ago, you told the folks a moment ago that there were two people.
Can I advise David just to make certain he speaks through you?
I'm sorry, I apologize.
It's not ever meant to be a dialogue between individual members without going through the chair.
Okay. I'm sorry, Wayne.
I had 3 questions that were directed to me last week, and one of them was for my own edification. So, and I asked them, they were answered. So I'm fine with that. Mm-hmm. And if we schedule for the next meeting that we debate or move to a point or discuss, then I'm all for that.
Then we'll put that on next week's agenda.
That's.
I will say one thing. I really want to cut this off because it's getting late and it's supposed to get really cold, and I'm worried about people getting home safely. But the only thing that I can say is, having listened to this, I totally understand. I am appreciative for anyone who volunteers. I think, though, that because of the kind of a board it is and because of the learning curve that's necessary, I just want to make a suggestion and I want you to think about it. Does it make sense similarly to the way that we do a probationary period for, for employees. When we hire employees, they're on probation for a year. I'm not suggesting probation. I'm suggesting a requirement of filling certain educational requirements within a year's time, okay? Having to be certified in whatever it is, okay? And that we make that a piece of doing the appointment, okay? So I'd like you to think about that, and think about what would you ask if you could ask a volunteer to say, you know what, if you're going to volunteer, you have to make a commitment to X number of classes or credits or however it works, okay? Because conservation is your thing, not mine, okay? Then what would what suggestion would you give? Because that's probably more where I would be thinking, okay? So, can we just wrap it up?
One more question here, please.
I just, again, the board voted, we made a recommendation. I don't understand
And we'll
why
take it up next week.
all of a sudden you're deciding
We'll take
to
it
hold
up next week.
There's been other commissioner members, Veronica Kell was one, who came into it not knowing anything. She said that in one of our meetings. She learned, she got her certificate. Asking someone to do it in a year is possible, but it depends on where you come in.
I don't want to discuss it now, Karen. I really don't want to discuss it now. We will discuss it next week. I'm saying that's how I'm thinking right now. That's just my opinion.
There's a board there. There's a board there.
But it was not on our agenda to do that. It was on our agenda to simply get an update from Mr. Kreidler, which he gave. I've allowed you all to speak. I understand where you're coming from. We'll talk about it next week at our meeting, okay?
Just for clarification, you'll talk about
The appointment.
Okay.
The appointment.
Okay.
Okay?
Madam Chair, next is non-contractual personnel policies and personal service contracts.
Excuse me, could I possibly ask for, I know we want to get out of here.
5-minute break?
Yeah.
Sure.
Says she with 2 empty bottles of
Adjourn.
water.
Make a motion, not to get to a 5-minute break, whatever it is.
Okay. Back in 5.
She's got a trap in the backyard.
I actually saw big
A
footprints.
box with a stick holding it.
Footprints on. Hello, we're back. Okay.
Madam
We
Chair.
did that one. Yes, please.
Non-contractual personnel policies and personal service contracts. There's been some conversation over the last couple of weeks, particularly about making certain that there's a melding of all of our personnel-related documents. So how do we have it come to be that everything that's in the union contract is clearly what's spelled out and codified, and the town is held to abide by, and the employees are held to abide by, but also have, outside of that document, standalone personnel policies and procedures that are also
Hey, Board of Selectmen
drawn in.
policies and procedures.
Certainly. So I did prepare that document as well that shows, how they interface, the standard language in the contracts is management, retains the right to do anything it wants, except if it's in conflict with one of the things that we've talked about here. So if there's a policy that exists outside of the contract that's not referenced in there, that's relatively easy to make certain we get incorporated. You impact bargain it, there's a process you can go through, and we can get that done. So I think the overarching discussion is, okay, that's great, we know how to do it, but let's do it, right? Let's take the existing policies, find out who they're applicable to, because now that, we're a 99.5% unionized workforce, those policies that were voted back in 2004 are expressly titled
Or
both in the
1999.
back in the bylaw and in the policies themselves are entitled non-contractual personnel policies and procedures. There's an express carve-out that says if you're in a contract, collective bargaining or personal service contract, these don't apply. So we need to make certain that, something exists for those employees that are outside of contract, and that the things that we want to make certain are outside of the contracts, but are policies we need to tie back, that we go through the process to get them tied back.
So, I know you've been working on that. Can we, I mean, it kind of relates to the other stuff we were just talking about too, just getting to the point where everything matches up and dovetails. Are you ready to talk about that?
I will be at if we're calling it a work session, either the next meeting or the one after, whatever your pleasure. But I do have, I've got all of the pieces at least lined up. I've spoken to council about it as a non-labor matter, I'm calling it a policy matter, so it goes on the free bill.
I also wonder, and we talked about this before, I think, too, other towns that our town council has done policies for.
Maynard particularly.
Yes.
Adam and I talked about.
Yeah, if we could use that as like a template kind of thing too. Why recreate the wheel if we don't have to, and why spend the money if we don't have to too? So as soon as you feel like you're ready to bring that forward, does that make sense?
Yeah,
Cindy?
I think we're pretty close to having that.
Because I think it's actually, it's part of your job description is to pull all that personnel stuff together anyway, so, okay.
The new town administrator in Pepperell comes from Maynard.
Yes, I know.
So he was the assistant in Maynard, so I do have a meeting next week with him, and one of the things on the list is to get access to all the work that they did over there from personnel, so we don't even have to go to Adam directly for it.
Yeah, I sent him a welcome. He is one of the people that I contacted for references for town council, so, and we talked for quite a while. He was very, very pleasant.
Good guy.
So let us know when.
Certainly.
All right.
Next, you have workers' compensation audit. Just very briefly, each year, we go through a process where the insurance company will look at our experience over the prior year, and they apply our experience modification against the number of employees we have and their types of classifications. So if they're sitting still and doing nothing, obviously there's not a lot of risk, so they're pretty cheap. But if they're a firefighter, well, that's not true. They're through a separate policy. If they're a public works person that's climbing on equipment and cutting trees, then it's more expensive.
Jumping in holes and stuff like that.
The good news is, this is one of the things that Carolyn was actually very good at. I don't mean that to sound like that's one of the things, like she's only good at.
She's watching.
And she is watching. Let me rephrase. Carolyn's been very effective at this, and in this case here, she found some mistakes that have been made by the carrier, and we're getting an $8,000 credit back.
Good.
So that's the good news on the workers' comp audit. Next and last is the fiscal year 20 budget process update. Chair and I spoke about this last week, just to provide an update. The policy that the town has that was adopted by the Board of Selectmen, which stems from the work that was done by the Collins Institute a couple of years ago, calls for the budget message to go out on or about now. There is a memo that's going out tomorrow. A copy of it's actually on the copier out in the hallway right now. And the update to the revenue expense projection sheet. The sheet, if you recall, and Wayne, this will be fun for you because it'll be your first dive into this document and seeing all the underpinnings and the formulas. The expenditure side of it is formula driven, obviously, so we don't know yet what health insurance is going to cost, which is a big driver. That's $1 million in our $10 million local budget type of thing. There's a plug in there of 8%, so that may be a real number, it may not. It's an estimate.
I was
was just testing the
Echo.
over-the-air audio, my apologies.
No, it's okay.
It's an echo in here.
On the revenue side, there are certain assumptions built in as well. So we've got 1% increase in local aid, for instance. These are just the standards that Collins Institute has worked into all of their pro formas. So right now, if I plug all of those things in and I make adjustments on the things that I know to be real, for instance, our new growth for the year that we just closed, we had an estimate of $132,000. I know that it was $184 that came in. So we plugged the real data in, and it runs the table again. So we see it. It's basically it takes a 5-year average.
Does it change the projection too?
It does. It takes a 5-year average, so it drops off the oldest year, adds the newest year, and then takes that average and multiplies it by the tax multiplier of 2.5%. So that then runs to the front sheet. So you'll see a little bit of a jump there. As we sit today, it's about $125,000 out of balance, which is last year at this time we were about $300,000 out before we began. So the tool is working as it should work because we're going to be continuing
So
to
starting
narrow
to
that.
provide the forecasting that
It is.
is a little bit more reliable, maybe?
Right. It's just getting tighter, as it should be if you're using the tool the way it's built, which we have been. It takes discipline to do that, and one thing that municipal governments at the local level are not particularly good about is being disciplined. So the tool is only as good as the people that are using it.
So be good.
Well, again, there are many hands.
It's late in the year already.
There are many hands that touch the process. So the budget memos will go out. It's a little easier this year because nearly all of the collective bargaining agreements are in place for next year. So we have those numbers and that data down.
Not a lot of ifs in that anyway. Huh?
Yeah, we have a peek at what our experience was like for health insurance last year, and the 8% that we're seeing might actually be, should actually be on the high side for what we'll actually see come in. So just as by way of update, that memo goes out tomorrow, so you'll have a copy of that emailed to you as well. And budgets will be due back the first week of January, and the budget process that you have in the document there gives you the steps moving forward from there. Okay.
I have a question regarding budget and regarding one of the goals, which is the road stuff.
Absolutely.
I'm assuming that, well, I'm not going to assume, I'm going to ask, how does that fit in with capital? It becomes part of capital plan.
I don't think that we have ever considered our roads a piece of capital.
No.
So let me tell you what I've done based on the goal that you set out. I presented the kind of 10,000-foot view of how we could get to where we need to go, which contemplated taking a piece of free cash and priming a fund, $250,000. Taking a piece of excise every year until we get to the point that that is also $250,000. So 50 grand a year over 5 years, building up some number. In the revenue expense projection sheet that you'll see tomorrow, you'll see that there is a new line that's been added for pavement management plan reserve, and it has a $50,000 piece with a footnote that it's coming from excise. So excise is X dollars, it's going to go up by the projected 1%, which is in the form. 50,000 of that appears on the expense side now.
All right, so it doesn't have to go to capital.
No, we've never done any of the roadway work, Chapter 90 or otherwise, through capital.
Okay.
The other piece is there would be the article for the $250,000 to prime would also be part of that. So you'll see the 250, the roughly 4 and change we get from Chapter 90, the 50 starting out from excise. So we'd have that without any additional tax impact in year one. Then there'd be the bigger discussion to have between now and the annual town meeting about whether or not there's an appetite to go forward with discussions about
for a long-term
debt exclusion.
Plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Catch up, if you will. Open up an open wound. If in the event that the marijuana bylaw gets approved for retail, that conversation as to putting into any percentage of that, the revenue from marijuana sales to be part of a budget conversation as far as
It would
identifying.
through either the tax piece or the host community
That's what I
agreement
mean,
piece.
in the-
So there are two bites of the apple there, and that becomes revenue that's,
A percent, like if a percentage of that would go to roads.
Or we could just build a couple of hotels.
Well, that's a whole different revenue stream because we
know,
get the hotel.
I know.
But, of course, you could have a hotel associated with a,
Casino?
well, we wouldn't have to,
right.
but we could have,
you're talking about a green hotel.
we could have a greenway where we could
Okay.
have
We're getting
conferences
tired.
based on,
Thank you for the budget update.
it's getting late.
That's all I have, Madam Chair, thank you.
All right. Cindy, did you have any?
I don't. I said my piece on the other two,
Okay.
twice.
Do you have anything?
I have nothing to read, but I'd just like to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody
Oh, yes.
and safe travels if you are traveling.
Thank you. I have a couple little things that I just want to mention. I went to the turkey dinner last night at the senior center. Chief was there too. It was great. It was really,
we not talk
really
about food?
good. I'm sorry.
I know.
It was really good.
I'm working on a ham sandwich at noon.
We had done the code of conduct and social media drafts. Can you run those by town council?
Yeah, they've been sent already.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, and when those are ready, can we get those on the agenda? Those
Okay.
kind of go in with the personnel stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
The last message I got from the board was to not do them one at a time, a piece, but wait till we have the whole
Well, that's what
sheet
I'm
matched
saying.
together.
Those are gonna have to dovetail with what you're doing for
Oh,
all the personnel
I gotcha.
stuff,
I
okay?
gotcha, yep.
So I just don't wanna get those lost.
Yep.
A couple things on MMA. The MMA annual conference is January 18th and 19th. I am planning on going. I didn't know if you folks had thought about it.
What day was, I'm sorry?
January 18th and 19th in Boston.
I've thought about it, but
Well, write it down and think
Okay.
about it. I think they're worth going to. Jim, you too? you know?
I've been 29 years running.
No, I know, but there's all kinds of new stuff
No,
going on
there
at the
definitely
state.
is. The networking in and of
Yeah.
itself is worth the
And
money.
in that, thank you for that segue, because the other one was, I went to the MMPA, the Personnel Association conference that they had over at Devon's.
Labor.
And I had the pleasure of meeting the Lieutenant Governor and talking to her for a little while, along with her aide. And I had a couple questions about some of the things that we're working on, like HR, because here we are at the personnel discussion, and we don't have, quote, an HR department. And right away, the Lieutenant Governor said, hey, you got to get involved in the best practices stuff. And we might be able to pay for somebody to come in and straighten that all out and set it all up for you. So I liked that offer. So I got back to her aide, who got me in touch with Sean
Cronin. yeah.
Cronin, okay? And I have yet to send a note back, and I'll copy you on it now
Please
that
do.
I've...
On that point, I did meet with the superintendent of schools, Brad Morgan, yesterday on the issue of exploring the regionalization of the HR function. They have a full-time HR person who, in her prior position, was HR director for Burlington, Mass, schools and local government together. The thing we kicked around yesterday was the expense of adding an additional admin support person in her office, determining what portion of her time or the office's time would be dedicated to Townsend or Townsend, Ashby, and Pepperell if it went as far as that. And then we would pay into that and have the value of somebody that has that skill without having the full benefit load. we haven't worked out as far as whether or not that would be a set number of hours that that person would be here in this business, this building, because obviously we don't want to have our files transferred out of the out of this location. So it hasn't gone that far down the road, but it was a very good first meeting. And one of the things we did talk about is best practices grants through the compact for HR.
All right, then I'll copy you on my response to Sean on that, because he just connected the two of us on that.
Very productive meeting yesterday on it.
And in that light, I would ask, I want to ask Sean as well, because Wayne and I, neither one of us were on the board when the best practices thing first came about, and in the year that I was on with the previous members, I really never got a good understanding of what it was all about and how it all worked. And
I don't think it had started yet.
It had.
Oh,
it
had it?
It had, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, the budget work we did came through that best
Yes,
practices through the
that's
compact.
right.
Oh, I know, but I don't think that came about until maybe your last couple months on the board, maybe.
No, it didn't even come, not in my last term.
Right,
When
it didn't exist.
Exactly, but when I got
She was saying last year.
When I got on
this time.
last year, you know, when I first got on for this
Oh.
term, I never got a real introduction to that. So I'm getting all of this information through MMA, and I'm saying, wait a minute, what's that? And sitting talking to the lieutenant governor, and she said, oh yeah, well, we've got this, and you can do this, and you know.
Because we had a lot of press on, but it's on the website, all the best practices.
Well, I understand, but that's not quite the same as having a sit-down and somebody explain it. And I thought about it, and I said, there's other boards, you know, the Housing Authority, planning, other people in town that could benefit from different aspects of it. There's one that tailors everything that you do with the senior citizen in mind, okay? And that sounds like a very worthwhile project. Suffice it to say that I think I'd like to set something up and maybe do a tri-town or all board to start, and see if Sean would come out and give us all an overview so that we can kind of think about the kinds of things that we could benefit from. We might as well take advantage of it. They're pushing this money.
Certainly.
We might as well get our piece of it, so.
I think planning and zoning, I mean, the housing one in particular.
The housing one
We're
is a
completely
big one.
forbidden, really, from getting, because we have to change our zoning bylaws to allow, you have to have, I'm being very general here, but in order to meet the best practices, and all the money that the governor's been really publicizing, giving money out in this housing choice thing, and trying to get more housing statewide, is we have to have zoning bylaws that allow for building. We have to have areas for multifamily dwellings, and more zoning by right, that a developer can come in and they have the right already to. They don't have to go through. Boards of appeals.
Streamline.
But we have to have streamlined zoning, which we do not have, and we've turned it down.
We've got them to help us get this done. And for us not to avail ourselves of that is just, it's foolishness. You know, for us to try to figure it out on our own, it's going to take us 3 times as long.
And I know Sean does that. Mr.
Yes.
Green does that.
Yes.
That type of local audience.
So I'm excited about that. I will copy you on it and then probably let you take it from there.
On that point, Madam Chair, when you talked about the senior citizens issue, Cindy and I actually have been talking about that in dovetailing with the goal and objective that you guys have that came from Cindy, which is creating a human service director, not a human resource director, but somebody looking at our aged population and having all
as
of our...
well, including the veteran service officer.
Right, the whole show across
We don't have
all
enough hours.
services.
I want to see the veteran service officer position grow to even, if we do end up with veterans housing, we have to have a full-time veteran service officer, because our veteran service budget is going to move the decimal point over a few times. So we need a full-time, but to have it, the human service department includes veterans and anything that has to do with opiate problems, substance abuse.
Absolutely.
Things that we're not dealing with at all right now.
So, best practices, all right?
Gotcha.
MMA conference, emails. Could you just look into that?
Yeah, I actually, I spoke with Sam about...
This is emails for the boards that we asked about a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, spoke with Sam about it today, and he's putting together the ones that are associated with, I know that your response was they can do a Gmail. We can't compel people to do that, but if we create with our domain, then they're going to be in existence with each passing board, not somebody's Gmail that they have to pass off to the next
My
guy.
question is, what went out to all of the boards? Did a memo go out, like a piece of paper memo in their mailboxes? Or
I'd have to ask Carolyn what went out
Okay.
after the last
All
meeting.
right.
I know that I've spoken with him about it because he's the guy that would be coordinating, creating such a list. I know that once we have the mail server, the cloud service server, instead of what we're currently limping along with, it'll be far easier to be able to do more seats, addresses than we currently have the capacity to do, but
I'm more concerned about, if I want to contact people, I want to know what the contact information is, and I don't, yes.
What is this in regards to? I did not get a memo on this.
this is having one master email list for each town, department, board, or commission. So if there needs to be a blast out to all boards and commissions, it can go out as one blast. If Sue is looking just to send something to the planning board, she doesn't necessarily have to send it to your or someone else's personal email account, because then you have public records issues, but there's
Yep.
one designated
Okay, so the planning board would have, quote, a planning board
at.
Right.
You could do it that way, and for all planning board business,
Okay.
somebody
Yeah, I would
would
prefer
use
to have
that
it
one.
outside my personal email.
Well, there's a real advantage to that, and that is if anybody ever requests public records, you know, you're obligated to maintain them. How
Exactly.
long is it?
Forever.
Is it forever?
Yeah.
I thought it was a
thought it
was
was 7
years,
years.
but,
I don't know public
yeah.
records. I don't believe on public records.
But, like, if I wanted to just send a note out to all of the chairmen of the
Right.
boards, I don't have everybody's email address.
Right.
That's a town-related email. And even if they've shared it with the town clerk, some have said, please don't share my email address with any, well, I don't want your email address, I want the official one.
So
Question?
I did set up a, vkplanningboard@gmail.com when I got on the planning board. But I thought we were talking about getting a town email.
Well, that's what Jim
Townsend,
was just talking
It's on
about.
the
So-
agenda.
for each of us on the boards.
Right.
Is that not true, or were you thinking
I
one?
wasn't going as far as each member of the board. I mean, now you're getting into,
But then you
Well,
have
that's-
to
that
designate
is-
who's gonna check it, who's gonna, do we all see that? And how does that work?
What do you mean, do you all
So, do you
see
see what
that?
I'm saying? If you do one email address for each board,
I think it's the chair.
it goes to the
It's the
chair,
chair
and then,
at that point.
just like if mail is coming in, it's coming in through the chair being agended, and then the whole board
That doesn't
has
prevent
access.
anybody from doing a Gmail account for their town work.
Yeah, but,
Each board can do it,
yeah, but I
however
would,
you want to do it.
I would think that since you're gonna go through Gmail for the mail server,
No.
you're not gonna go through
No.
Google, you're gonna have your own mail server?
Yeah.
Okay.
Either way, number one, it should be separate from your
Correct.
personal stuff. And number two, it should be a way for anybody to get in contact with you that has a question to your board or to you, So,
I would push to have it for all elected officials, because I know
well,
that,
that's my preference.
Yeah, to
And-
have it for
and
all
now I'm
elected
hearing
officials.
that you didn't even get the memo, so it just reinforces that
I
we
think
need
when we
better
start adding,
communication.
if we're gonna do the Office 365 thing, my understanding about how that works is,
It's all
if we're gonna do any
cloud-based
kind of
anyway.
contractual, or even our own system that we have now, it costs money. You can't just, it's not like we all can go get 15 Gmail accounts right now. That's free for each of us, but I think if we have a
With each
service,
seat, each address, it's
We're going to-
some number of
we have to
dollars per
pay-
year subscription.
a subscription for
Well-
every single email
but
address.
currently right now, we
difference
have our own
between-
mail server.
Well,
We have our own mail server currently right now.
who does?
In the
We
town.
do, the town.
Right.
For what
It's
it
running-
is.
it's
But I don't want
for
to
what it is,
talk,
for what
I don't
it
want
is.
to talk about the how right now. I don't want to talk about the details. I just wanted to know, did everybody get the memo?
And I will find out
All right,
to what
thank you.
extent message was given. My response was that I've been speaking with Bassam about how to create it.
Okay,
And I can, Madam Chair, I did look up that communications as public records are 5 years.
I thought it was 5 or 7.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's all? Oh, good.
so they can age off after 5 years.
I can delete that Gmail account in 2.5 years.
Keep it ready.
Okay,
I'll keep it for a while.
Wayne,
I move the board sign the payroll and bill warrants out of session.
Second?
been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move we adjourn at 8:50.